Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, the MHA What If with another fanfiction. This is the first part of What If Deku Had a Class 3A Dating Experiment? All credits for this video go to their respective authors, so please support the real author. Check out the link in the description for more details. Please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanf. It seemed like just another ordinary day for the famous Class 3A of UA High School, the top hero academy in Japan. Aizawa, zipped up in his usual yellow sleeping bag, sat at his desk and watched as his 20 students silently worked on their assignments. Life had been going well for them lately, with All for One, Shigaraki, and the rest of the Paranormal Liberation Front defeated once and for all. The amount of villain attacks on the school had decreased substantially, and Class 3A seemed destined to continue learning and eventually become one of the greatest group of heroes the world had ever seen. But for now, things were calm, quiet, and peaceful, just like a normal high school should be. Until that peace was broken without warning when Mina Ashido put down her pencil, stood up at her desk, and screamed, I can't take it anymore. Aizawa jumped so badly at the sudden shout that he toppled over out of his desk and slammed, rather painfully, onto the floor face first. Wiggling out of his sleeping bag, he stood up and was internally grateful none of his students seemed to notice, as they had all been similarly startled by Ashido and were now staring at her in shock. Ashido had her hands clenched into fists and was breathing heavily, looking like someone had just insulted her grandmother to her face. Mina, are you okay? Hagakure asked, standing up at her own desk. What's wrong? Why the hell are you fucking yelling in the middle of class? Bakugo demanded. Because I'm sick of this. Ashido yelled, throwing her arms out wildly. All of this is bullshit. Aizawa came around his desk to stand in front of Ashido, holding his hands up as if he was approaching a wild animal. Ashido, what do you mean, you're sick of this? Are you saying you're sick of being in the hero course? There were some gasps. Mina, don't tell me you don't want to be in the hero class anymore? Kirishima begged, tears in his eyes. No, of course that's not what I mean. Ashido snapped. I am talking about this. With that, she began gesturing to pretty much the entire classroom. Now, everyone's concern began to shift into confusion. I don't understand, Ida said, standing up and making his usual chopping motions. What exactly do you mean by this, Ashido? I am talking about the unending, suffocating sexual tension that is permeating every inch of our lives. Utter silence. Aizawa felt his left eye twitch. Excuse me? Ashido turned to her teacher, all sanity gone from her eyes. Aizawa-sensei, I am talking about the fact that I am constantly surrounded by the sexiest heroes in training that Japan has ever seen. Not only do I have to resist the urge to rip my clothes off and throw myself to the ground like a sacrificial lamb in every single class, but we live together. Do you know what it's like to be forced to live under the same roof as a bunch of hot people? Do you, sensei? What? Look at them all. Look at them all. Ashido turned to her stunned classmates. Uraraka is the cutest fucking cinnamon roll ever. Hagakure is somehow sexier invisible than most visible people. Jairu is so cool and badass and pretty. Ajui is the most beautiful frog I've ever seen, and I have thought about your tongue so much it's not even funny. Aoyama is too fabulous for me to function properly. Kuda is sunshine and everything good in this world incarnate. Todoroki could burn me alive and I would thank him. Kaminari is a literal electric babe. I want Kirishima to bite my neck. Eiji, your teeth are so sexy. I would die for Midoriya to even just kiss me on the cheek. Siro awakens so many bondage fantasies within me. Sadu is so big and strong and beautiful. Bakugo is literally so hot he explodes things. Tokoyami is basically two boyfriends in one dark and delicious package. Shuji has 6 arms and they're all ripped. God, just crush me. Ojiro is so handsome and badass and his tail is so fluffy. Yaoyorozu is literally God herself. Ida is so charming and hot and smart dash. And Shinsu. Ashido pointed at the young man in question with both hands. Look at Shinsu. Look at everything about him. Thanks. Shinso said unsurely. You are welcome, you gorgeous purple gremlin. Ashido whispered. Everyone else was either hiding their giant blushes in their hands or staring at Ashido in open-mouth shock. Aizawa, meanwhile, was considering whether he should jump out the window or just slam his head into the wall a few dozen times. Ashido, he said in a warning tone, hoping to cut off her ranting before Midoriya passed out. Wow, he wasn't sure he'd ever seen him look that red before, and that was saying something. The horned girl ignored him, however. But the thing is, it's not just that everyone is hot. Oh, that's not enough torment. Everyone is so nice. And cool. And powerful. And smart. Like, not only am I constantly fantasizing about what everyone looks like naked, I have actual feelings too. That's not fair, universe. Not fucking fair. How dare you make me want to hold hands and cuddle and go on dates with 19 other people. I have enough problems as it is. I burned a hole in the common room table because I fell asleep and drooled acid on it, god damn it. I don't need 19 crushes at the exact same time. Wait, what did you do to the common room table? Not the time Ida. Ashido yelled. No, it really isn't Ashido. Aizawa cried. Sit the fuck down. I can't, sensei. We need to do something about this now, because I swear to All Might himself if I do not make out with someone soon I am going to set this school on fire. That's kinda hot. Shinsu Hitoshi, I do not need this right now dash. Enough. Aizawa boomed, causing everyone to go silent and turn to face the front of the room. Ashido, sit down now. Once the pink-skinned girl had done so, Aizawa sighed and rubbed his eyes in frustration. Fucking hell, my student just had a mental breakdown over how hot her classmates are. What the hell even is my life? Ashido, he started. I understand that, as a teenager, matters like feelings and attraction can be overwhelming and confusing, especially in an environment as stressful as this. I get it, I really do. But this kind of outburst in the middle of class was completely inappropriate and disruptive. If you truly needed to speak with your classmates about something like this, you should have done so in private. Do you understand? Ashido looked down at her desk. Yes, I do, sensei. I'm sorry for freaking out like that, she replied softly. Now that she had calmed down, it was clear the girl was deeply embarrassed by her own outburst. Looking across the room, he could see that all of his students were sporting matching embarrassed and uncomfortable looks on their faces. Even Todoroki, the most stoic of them, was completely red-faced. However, he also quickly realized that some strange unidentified emotion was clearly at war with their other feelings, because everyone was shooting each other looks of, oh dear God, what the hell? Letting out a deep sigh, Aizawa decided there was no hope of getting everyone back on track with their schoolwork. However, since the subject has been brought up, Aizawa continued, causing the class to sit up at attention. He just hoped he would actually be able to finish this goddamn sentence without losing the will to live entirely. Do any of you have similar feelings to what Ashido just described? Everyone stared at him, seemingly shocked he would even ask such a thing to them. Aizawa was honestly a bit shocked at himself, but if this turned out to be a problem affecting all of his problem children, no, he hadn't adopted all of them in his own mind no matter what Hisashi liked to say, then it would have to be addressed sooner or later. He was also genuinely curious. After a few moments of silence, Ojiro took a deep breath and raised his hand. I do, he stuttered, blushing when everyone else in class turned to look at him. Gulping, he continued speaking. Before I came to UA, I never really had any meaningful relationships with my peers. But we all went through so much together so fast, I couldn't help but begin to feel strongly for all of you. This class basically became my family. And I've realized over the time we've known each other, just how much I care about you all. I'm not entirely sure just how deep my feelings go, but if any of you asked me out on a date, I don't think I'd say no. To any of you. Behind him, Kaminari made a happy noise. Ojiro turned to look at the blonde, and saw him smiling widely. Dude, I feel exactly the same, he said, looking around to each of his classmates. I mean, I always wondered, which of us would end up getting together. I mean, what were the odds of every person in class being bi or pansexual? But, over the last 2 years, I've had crushes on pretty much everyone. I've just never had the nerve to ask anyone out. God yes. Uraraka suddenly exclaimed. She looked as if a heavy weight had just been taken off her shoulders. I've wanted to ask all of you out at one point or another. Like multiple times. But I could never bring myself to do it, not just because I was worried about what would happen if I dated one of my friends and it didn't work out, but because I didn't just want one of you. I wanted all of you. Shuji spoke up next. Everyone could tell he was red under his mask, but his voice stayed strong. And I never said anything because I was ashamed of it. I felt like I was being selfish, wanting more than one person to hold close to my heart. So did I, Todoroki admitted quietly. He was staring down at his hands. Considering the way I grew up, feelings were already so confusing. When I started to have romantic thoughts about one of my classmates, I had enough trouble dealing with that. But then I opened myself up more, and let each of you into my life, and then I was suddenly thinking those kinds of thoughts about everyone. I didn't understand what was happening to me. I thought something was wrong with me, feeling the way I do for so many different people. That's not selfish at all, guys. And there's nothing wrong with it, Jairu exclaimed. It's called being polyamorous. Which apparently we all are, somehow, because, shit, I've thought about what kissing each of you would be like more times than I can count. You guys don't know how many times I've baked something to try to confess my feelings to someone, only to chicken out and throw it away, Sata confessed with a shaky laugh. That's not as sad as how many trees I've probably killed trying to write each of you love poems to confess my own attraction, Tokoyami said. Dark Shadow popped up. He pines so much after all of you, it's pathetic. Silence, Dark Shadow. Oh come on, Fumi, it's okay. Apparently everyone in the class has been pining just as pathetically. Hey, shut the fuck up, you stupid shadow. Bakugu erupted, shaking his fist at the sentient quirk. Nothing I do is pathetic. You do realize that you basically just admitted to being as big of a pining mess as the rest of us, right, Bakugu? Zero couldn't help but giggle. Fuck you. Wait, so, do you have feelings for the rest of the class too, Kaken? Midoriya asked. Bakugu froze, and then looked at Midoriya with a frown when he saw the hopeful expression in his childhood friend's eyes. Aizawa held his breath, ready to intervene if necessary. However, his worry turned out to be unneeded, because Bakugu simply scoffed and looked at his classmates with a sneer that not a single one of them bought for a second. I guess, if I had to choose a group of idiots to have stupid fucking feelings for, there would be worse options than you losers. Dude. Kirishima launched out of his seat and grabbed Bakugu in a hug. That was basically a marriage proposal coming from you. Get the fuck off of me, shitty hair, or I won't date you at all. Kirishima let go with a laugh and sat back down at his seat. Seriously though, guys, I can't tell you how relieved I am. I thought I was the only one who had crushes on literally the entire class. You're all just so awesome. And manly. I couldn't help but feel something for all of you. You know, this isn't really much of a surprise, Azui said, tapping her finger to her cheek in thought. Aizawa begged to fucking differ but remained silent so she could speak. Traumatic or life-changing events tend to lead to strong bonds being formed, and we all went through quite a lot of those together. Not to mention that we have all been living together for almost 2.5 years. It's not unreasonable that we would develop romantic feelings for each other, Ribbit. But, Ida spoke up, sounding stunned. Do all of us truly have feelings for everyone else in class? Because I am truly astounded if that is the case. I'm not, Shinso spoke up. When I transferred to the hero course, you guys were pretty much the first people in my life to fully accept me, no matter the quirk I had. I fell hard. I just thought I was gonna have to suck it up and act like I wasn't head over heels for my entire class until we graduated, unless I somehow managed to grow a spine and ask someone out. Well, I've always known I was too fabulous to let just one person have me all to themselves, Aoyama said, striking a pose. However, he then relaxed into a more normal posture, giving everyone a sincere smile, not showing off in the slightest. And I must say, nothing would make me happier than to call any one of you mon amour. Oh my gosh, is this actually happening? Hagakure was almost vibrating with excitement. Are we all seriously on the same page here? Because I'm like, seriously at least half in love with all of you. How can you be half in love with someone? Bakugu asked. For once, his voice lacked the usual bite. Instead, he looked a little overwhelmed. Aizawa couldn't blame him. I think what she means is that, even though none of us have ever spoken our feelings aloud until now, Yayarosa said, smiling wider than any of them had ever seen. I genuinely can't imagine my life without any of you. And I think each of us feels exactly the same. The sound of sniffling brought everyone's attention to Ashido, who was wiping at the tears running down her cheeks. Ashido? Midoriya asked. Why you guys? Ashido sobbed, looking up at the class and beaming. I was just venting. I was just a sad bee because I thought that no one else would share the same feelings as me. I never in a million years thought that all of you would feel the same as I do. She let another sob, this time mixed with a laugh. I'm so happy right now. A tapping noise caused Ashido to look over to Kuda. The boy smiled softly and signed something to her. Are you crying because it hurt when you fell out of heaven? Ashido and half of the class burst out into laughter. Oh my gosh, Kikuta. Ashido giggled helplessly. I didn't even know you knew any cheesy pickup lines. Ah, no fair. Siro whined. I want Kuda to sign stupid pickup lines to me. With that, everyone broke down into laughter. Aizawa watched as all of the tension from Ashido's outburst faded, and a general feeling of giddiness and relief was swept through his students, who apparently were now all dating each other, or at the very least wanted to. Oh great, now I'm going to be forever known as the teacher whose class formed a polyamorous cult. Hizashi will never let this go. Wait, everyone. Aizawa and the class turned to Ida, who had stood up at his desk. While I am unbelievably happy that we all share the same affections for one another, we still should not jump into something like a 20-way relationship without at least considering the consequences. Dude, what consequences? Kaminari asked. We all just admitted we all like each other. Why don't we all just call each other boyfriends and girlfriends and be done with it? What I mean, Denki, Ida continued, pushing up his glasses and not noticing Kaminari's surprised blush upon hearing Ida use his given name, is whether we truly think such a relationship would last. Come on, Tenya, don't be such a sourpuss. Hagakure said, jumping up out of her seat to turn to the class representative. After everything else we've been up against, being in a polyamorous relationship should be a cinch. Wait, so are we calling each other by our first names now? Todoroki asked. I mean at this point why not? Shinso replied. Todoroki hummed. I suppose you're right, Hitoshi, he blinked. I like this. I don't mean to be a sourpuss, as you say Toru, Ida continued. But think about it. Being in a relationship with one person is already difficult. Imagine how much harder it would be to date 19 people. Besides, even though I feel a great deal of affection for all of you, it cannot be ignored that some of us know others better than the rest. Some of us have stronger bonds than with others. What if we entered into this kind of relationship, and something negative occurred that caused it to fall apart? Ida's face became forlorn. To be truthful, I don't know if I could bear it if I lost even a single one of you as a friend. The class fell silent as they contemplated Ida's words. As excited as they had been to hear everyone sharing the same feelings about one another, he had a point. This was dangerous territory, with the potential to become something amazing, or rip their tight-knit family apart if something went wrong. Well, maybe we shouldn't start off with all 20 of us dating at once? The class looked to Midoriya, who was staring off with a contemplative look on his face. Tenya's right. I mean, for example, no matter how strong of feelings I have for both of them, I still know Ochako better than I know Rikido. It would be heartbreaking if we attempted to all date, only to discover that some of us don't have as great of a connection as we thought, causing repercussions for the group as a whole. The green-haired boy turned to everyone else. So what if we do a test run? A test run? What do you mean? Jair asked. Well, before we make anything official, we should all at least go on one real date with each other, Midoriya explained. To see if there's anything there? Ah, I see. Shuji exclaimed. So we can use these dates to individually determine which members of the class we share true romantic feelings with, and which members we may be better remaining friends with? What a brilliant idea, Izuku. Ida agreed. The rest of the class made similar noises of agreement and excitement. Oh, I have so many amazing date ideas. Hagakure cried. I am going to blow all of your minds. Yeah, except there's one problem, you idiots, Bakugu interrupted, scowling. How the fuck are we all supposed to go on 19 different dates? I mean, even if we all got permission to leave campus every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night, it's still going to take us at least 7 weeks to get through every single person. That sounds like just enough time for some people to start having second thoughts. The class all collectively frowned again, once again, a valid point. Aizawa, really regretting every decision he had ever made up to this point, cleared his throat to get their attention once more. Even though I really shouldn't be doing this, for the sake of making sure that this romantic drama stops interrupting your studies as quickly as possible, Aizawa sighed. I will speak to Principal Nedzu and the other teachers about possibly giving you guys a week or two off so that you have plenty of time to do your test run dates. The class gasped. Aizawa-sensei, are you sure? Yaoyorozu asked. We don't want to completely disrupt you and the other teachers' curriculums. Speak for yourself, 2 weeks off from school just to go on dates. Awesome. Kaminari yelled, looking like he just won the lottery. Ojiro smacked him in the face with his tail. Oh, hey, we're pretty much boyfriends now, you have to be sweet to me. Trust me, Yaoyorozu, Aizawa replied, ignoring Kaminari's antics. The idea of this makes me want to stick my head into boiling water. He paused. However, I know that this will weigh heavily on all of you until it is resolved, and I suppose I care more about your emotional well-being than I do a few missed homework assignments. Everyone smiled in excited disbelief. Was this actually about to happen? Todoroki stood up and surprised everyone by bowing deeply towards their teacher. Thank you for being so supportive of us, Sensei, Todoroki said. I know this must seem very strange to you. Following his lead, the rest of the class also stood up and bowed. Thank you, Aizawa-sensei. Aizawa did not get choked up. Shut the fuck up, universe. Of course, was what he said aloud. Now, we're going to spend the rest of the class sitting in silence so I can try and take a nap and figure out how the hell I'm going to explain this to the rest of the teachers. Everyone nodded and sat back down, and Aizawa quickly zipped himself back up into his sleeping bag. Oh, and Ishido? Detention for a week. You know what? Worth it? It wasn't until Friday night that the class got any news about whether Aizawa's offer was accepted. For the few days leading up to that moment, everyone of Class 3A existed in what seemed like a fugue state. They tried to go on as normal, but everyone knew that there was something new in the air, a romantic tension that had previously existed under the belief that each individual member was the only one feeling it. But now they all could feel it, and Ishido was right. It was suffocating. Luckily, tonight their suffering was finally brought to an end. Everyone was in the dorm's common room, all going about their business and ignoring various urges to hold hands or cuddle or, most daringly, sneak off to a dark corner of the room to make out. Then, everyone looked up when they heard Uraraka let out a squeal. Aizawa-sensei just sent me a message. She cried, holding up her cell phone. Principal Nedzu gave us the okay to take 2 weeks off to go on our dates. Holy shit, I did not think that would actually happen. Shinso said while everyone else cheered. Are we sure that's allowed? Who cares? Ishido cried, launching herself across the couch to land in Shinso's lap and give him a hug, leaving the purple-haired boy blushing furiously. Now we can finally get somewhere with our love lives. Ooh, I'm so excited. I can't wait to go on a date. With each of you. Speaking of which, Sata said, has anyone decided how exactly we're going to decide who we're going on dates with first? Already ahead of you. Yaoyorozu set down her laptop and smiled at everyone. I decided the best way for us to go about deciding our dates was to input all of our names into an online randomizer and split us up into 10 pairings. That way we don't have to worry about hurting anyone's feelings by choosing who we want to go out with first. And then once we've all gone on our dates, I've set the randomizer up so that it can make 10 new pairings without accidentally repeating the same couple twice. That's a great idea, Yamamo. Midoriya beamed at the taller girl, causing her to blush and giggle. That will make figuring all of this out a lot less complicated. Well, what are we waiting for? Hagakure cheered. Hit that randomize button, Momo. Ooh, Wait, I have another idea, Kaminari said, waving his hand excitedly to get everyone's attention. When that list splits us up into pairs, whoever's name is first in each pairing should be the one who plans the date. Nothing's more awkward than trying to decide who should be the one to plan everything out. If we do it like that, at least some of the pressure is off. Huh, that's a smart idea, Denki, Jiraiya commented, slyly grinning over at the electric blonde. Kaminari smiled back at her, pleased at the compliment. Indeed. Are we all in agreement? Whoever's name is listed first in each pairing shall be in charge of planning the date. Ida said. Everyone nodded. Very well. Yaoyorozu hovered her finger over the keyboard. 3, 2, 1 randomized dating. It only took a second for the online randomizer to create a list of 10 pairings, and Yaoyorozu cleared her throat, the rest of her classmates giving her their full attention. Okay, so here are the results. Looks like we've got Hyuka and Ochako, Kuji and Yuga, Rikidu and Hitoshi, Katsuki and Denki, Mezu and Tenya, Ijiru and Izuku, Toru and Mashireo, Shuto and Hanta, Tsuyu and Mina, and finally myself and Fumikage. Yaoyorozu finished reading off her list. She glanced over at Tokoyami, who was sitting only a few seats away from her. He looked back at her and attempted to look cool, desperately trying to hide just how excited he was to go on a date with her, which was kind of ruined by Dark Shadow bursting out and giving her finger guns. Yaoyorozu blushed and laughed as Tokoyami started trying to force Dark Shadow back into his body. And my name came up first, so I have to plan the date. I better start thinking of a date idea that both me and Fumikage will enjoy. Oich, thank God, Kaminari cried, slumping in his seat. I am so glad I don't have to plan the date. I had 0 ideas. Oi, what the fuck, Pikachu? Bakugu yelled. I'm sorry, I'm still kind of processing this whole thing. Kaminari yelled back. Well, you know what? I'm gonna take you on the best fucking date of your life. Bakugu screamed, pounding his hand into his fist. Prepare to get wooed, motherfucker. Please don't woo him too much, he has 18 more dates to go on after this, Jiraiya joked, tapping her chin thoughtfully as she tried to think about what to do with Uraraka. All around the room, those whose names had come up first were all deep in thought and sharing shy glances with those they would be going out with. Oh my God, I think it finally just hit me, Ciro said, looking dizzy. I'm going on 19 different dates with each of my classmates. Holy shit, what the hell did we get ourselves into? Something incredible, darling. Aoyama cheered. The rest of the class couldn't help but cheer along with him. Let the dating begin. When Uraraka heard her phone buzz, she practically flew across the room to grab it. She was so excited she accidentally activated her quirk, and cursed as she scrambled to grab her phone before it floated up to the ceiling. Could you blame her? She had been waiting to hear from Jiraiya about their date since everyone had gone to bed the night before. She was freaking pumped. Eyes sparkling when she saw she indeed had a message from Jiraiya, she opened the chat app their entire class used. Earphone Jack, you awake yet? Uravity, yep. Earphone Jack, awesome. You up for going out to a concert together tonight? Uravity, really? That's so cool. Uraraka paused. Weren't concert tickets super expensive, especially if you got them so last minute? Oh God, she hoped Jiraiya hadn't spent a fortune just for a first date. Before she could keep freaking out, Jiraiya sent another message. Earphone Jack, one of my buds from JH is playing out tonight, she said she could get us in for free. Uravity, hell yes, that sound amazing. Earphone Jack, glad 2 hours it. Meet you outside dorms at 8? Uravity, I'll be there. Smiley face, smiley face, smiley face, smiley face. Earphone Jack, Al, you are so damn cute. Uraraka squeaked and blushed, holding her phone to her chest as she beamed. She said, I'm cute. Holy crap, this is going to be amazing. Then she gasped. Shit, I don't own cool clothes. What am I going to wear? Jiraiya hummed quietly to herself as she waited outside Heights Alliance. It was a few minutes past 8 and Uraraka hadn't shown up, but she wasn't concerned. She looked down at herself. She had decided to wear a dark gray t-shirt with ripped shoulders, as well as black skinny jeans with a studded belt. She also carried a small black handbag. Not too bad, she thought. Hey, I'm here. Jairu turned around and froze. Uraraka was dressed in a black and pink, long-sleeve turtleneck shirt and a pink skirt, with black leggings on underneath and a pair of pink boots. But what truly stood out to Jairu was Uraraka's hair, which was pulled back into a stylish ponytail, letting her bangs hang over her face in an extremely cute way. And a black leather jacket. Uraraka was wearing a black leather jacket. Sorry I'm a few minutes late, she was saying. I didn't have anything to go with the shirt, so I borrowed this jacket from Mina. Thank you, Mina, was all Jairu could think. After a few moments of silence in which Jairu probably should have said something instead of staring like an idiot, the brunette started to play with the end of her sleeve nervously. Is what I'm wearing okay? I know it's not, like, the coolest outfit to wear to a concert, but dash. You look beautiful, Jairu blurted out. Her face immediately turned beet red. Jesus, at least try to play it cool, Kyuka. Uraraka looked surprised, but then she smiled. Thank you, Kyuka, she replied. You look beautiful too. Kyuka smiled back, feeling her embarrassment subside. Yeah, that's right. I don't need to try to be cool. Not with her. You ready to go? Let's do it. So have you ever been to a concert before? Jairu asked as the girls sat on the train into the city. Uraraka laughed and rubbed her head. Unless the cultural festival back in our first year counts, then not really. Well, don't worry, Jairu said. I'm a veteran mosh pitter. I'll show you all the ropes. Awesome. First question, what is a mosh pit? The girls soon arrived at the venue, an old-looking brick building in downtown Mizudafu. After letting the bouncer know who they were let in without any fuss. Uraraka looked around in awe, seemingly impressed by everything she saw. Wow, there's a lot of people here. Your friend's band must be pretty popular, right? I like to think so, a girl with bright green hair and devil horns said, approaching the pair. How's it going, Jairu? What's up, Shimizu? Long time no see, Jairu replied, giving the other girl a quick hug. Thanks for getting us in. Dude, my pleasure. Especially if you're bringing this cutie in, Shimizu said, giving Uraraka a flirtatious look, making the other girl blush. Man, no wonder you sounded so desperate on the phone last night. If I had this beauty waiting for a good night out, I'd shoot all might in the face to make sure she got it. Shimizu. I'm just messing around. Shimizu laughed. Me and the others gotta finish setting up. You two just relax and enjoy the show, got it? Got it? Uraraka said. Thanks again. Shimizu walked off, and Uraraka turned to Jairu with a big grin. Wow, I can't believe you're friends with a rock star. Jairu laughed. Please don't call her that, she has enough of an ego. But she's right, let's have some fun. You want to go look at the merch table before the show starts? Uraraka blanched. I mean it would be cool to get some stuff, but I didn't bring any money. Yeah, but remember, Jairu said, feeling bold. She took a step forward and wrapped her arm around Uraraka's waist and pulled the other girl closer. I'm the one taking you out, so I'll pay for everything. I want you to enjoy yourself, so get whatever you want, Ochako. Uraraka blushed, but then she smiled and surprised Jairu by kissing her on the cheek. Thanks, Kyuka. Uraraka ran over to the merch table, eagerly looking over the various t-shirts and accessories depicting the band's logo. Meanwhile, Jairu stood frozen in the middle of the club, her own face now as red as a lobster. Geez, is that how you always react when a pretty girl kisses you? Jairu was shocked out of her stupor when she heard Shimizu's voice echo loudly throughout the club, the other girl sending her a shit-eating grin from where she stood on stage with a microphone in hand. Shimizu! Eventually, Jairu joined Uraraka at the merch table, and they spent a few minutes looking at the different shirts, bracelets, and other accessories. Soon, the club's owner came on stage to announce that the band would soon be starting, and everyone inside began swarming to the stage. Uraraka frowned as she watched what seemed like a mob form. Oh damn, that's a big crowd. Jairu nudged her with her shoulder and gestured to a nearby high table, where there were less people standing around. Come on, let's go over there, it will be way more comfortable. Uraraka nodded and they crossed the club to the open spot. Jairu set her bag on the table and pulled out 2 soda cans. Free soda always tastes better than soda you buy. My hero. Uraraka crooned, accepting the drink and taking a sip. Oh, I love cherry soda, how did you know? You only mention it at lunch every single day, Jiraiya joked. The two relaxed at the table and watched as Shimizu and her band got ready. What's up, Mizudefu? We are scared plus horny, and get ready to have your fucking faces melted off with rock and roll. I don't know why, but I feel like she would get along with Mina, Uraraka whispered. Jiraiya snorted. The band quickly started their set, and Uraraka was surprised at how quickly she got into the music. Punk rock was never really her jam, but Shimizu had an amazing voice, and all the songs were catchy as hell. So what do you think? Jiraiya asked when the first song ended. They're so cool. This music is really good. Uraraka cried. Yeah, Shimizu's always been a huge talent, Jiraiya said. Uraraka glanced at her slyly. Well, she doesn't compare to you in any way, but it's still pretty good. The zero-gravity user laughed when Jiraiya, once again, turned red. For the next 30 minutes or so, the two girls enjoyed the show, silently listening to scared plus horny songs. Uraraka kept giggling whenever she thought of their name, and then talking about whatever came to mind in between them. After one particularly high-paced song came to an end, Shimizu stopped playing and grinned out at the crowd. Alright, this next one goes out to all the lovers out there. I want all of you romantic bitches out in front of the stage like an awkward middle school dance. Come on, don't be shy. Jiraiya facepalmed. Oh, she's totally doing this to screw with us, I know it. Well, who says that's a bad thing? And suddenly Uraraka was grabbing Jiraiya's hand and pulling her closer to the stage. Come on, let's dance. Okay, Jiraiya stammered. They found a nice spot directly in front of Shimizu, who grinned at them. Jiraiya fought the urge to flip her off, and instead focused on Uraraka, who had put her hands around Jiraiya's neck and was smiling very adorably at her. Wow, she's so cute. I can't believe this is happening. Shimizu began to strum her guitar into a slow, seductive beat, and opened her mouth to sing. It was a song about not wanting to have any regrets, and taking the leap into something you know was real, even if everything in the world was telling you it would never work. Strangely fitting for tonight, Jiraiya thought. Jiraiya and Uraraka slowly swayed back and forth. Shimizu had been right. This felt a little like being in an awkward middle school dance. But it was also pretty nice to just be there in each other's arms. You know, Kyuka, Uraraka broke the silence. I was really nervous about tonight. Yeah, Jiraiya admitted sheepishly. So was I. What? Why were you nervous? Uraraka asked. Like you said, you're a veteran mosh pitter. I'm like a fish flopping around on the beach. I'm completely out of my element here. Oh, come on, give yourself some more credit, you're doing great. Besides, it doesn't matter if this is your first concert, what's important is that you're having fun. And you look like you're having fun, Jiraiya teased. Uraraka chuckled. Yeah, but that's mostly because you're with me. Jiraiya's heart skipped a beat. I was nervous because I really wanted to make sure you had fun. I really love seeing you happy, Ochako. I am really happy, Kyuka, Uraraka replied. Gulping, Jiraiya decided there was no better time than now. Slowly, she began to lean forward. The music cut off with an audible shriek, causing both girls to yelp and jump out of surprise. They looked up to the stage, where Shimizu had abruptly stopped playing and had a bored look on her face. All right, enough of that slow nonsense, Shimizu said. She grabbed the microphone and started to shout. Let's fucking go. God damn it, Shimizu. The music seemed to increase by 1,000,000 decibels, and Uraraka felt like her brain was rattling. She winced but looked at Jiraiya with a smile. Wow! Uraraka shouted to Jiraiya. The music is really loud this close to the stage. Yeah, it is. You want to go back to our other spot? Jiraiya shouted back. No way! Uraraka yelled. This is awesome. Come on, let's rock out. Jiraiya burst out into laughter as Uraraka started to headbang in earnest, but she couldn't help but join in. Several other people around them started to follow their lead, and soon the entire crowd in front of the stage was headbanging to the rock and roll beat. Hell yeah! Uraraka screamed, throwing her fists in the air. Seeing Uraraka getting so into it, Jair decided to stop worrying about making sure the date went well and let loose. She closed her eyes and let the music wash over her, and soon she found herself moving with the beat, throwing her arms out and shaking her body to the sound. Uraraka was having the time of her life. As the song came to an end and another banger began, she glanced over to her date to comment once more on how good the music was, only to find herself catching her breath. Jairu was dancing beside her, and Uraraka didn't know if it was something to do with the club lighting, or just the atmosphere in general, or hell maybe it was just Jairu herself, but, in that moment, she looked like a literal punk rock angel. Uraraka found herself completely overwhelmed with the sight of her. Jair looked so, completely free. The way she moved, the way she totally lost herself in the music. For a moment, Uraraka thought Jair didn't belong anywhere else but here, dancing her heart out with the sound of rock filling the air. God, she was stunning. Eventually, Jair noticed Uraraka staring at her, and she slowly stopped dancing. "What's up?" she asked, breathing heavily. Uraraka didn't answer. Instead, she took Jairu's face in her hands and kissed her. Jairu's eyes widened in shock, before they closed as she wrapped her arms around Uraraka, deepening the kiss. In that moment, the sound of rock and everyone around them disappeared, and the two became completely lost in each other. Shimizu saw the kiss and stopped singing for a moment. "Get it, Jairu?" She laughed when Jairu flipped her off, without breaking the kiss for a second. Hours later, Jair held the door open to the dorms for Uraraka, who walked inside with a yawn. Jairu followed after her. "Thanks for being kind to my wallet," she joked, gesturing to the band t-shirt Uraraka was now wearing. They had picked it up after the show. "No, thank you. I love this shirt," Uraraka said cheerfully, clutching the CD she had also bought. She had become an overnight fan of Shimizu's band. She then giggled and looked down at the floor. "And I love tonight. Thank you for an amazing date." Jairu smiled back, and this time she was the one who kissed Uraraka. "Anytime, my beautiful little headbanger." "Anytime." Kuda gulped and raised a shaking hand to knock on the door in front of him, keeping his other arm behind his back. After a moment, it opened to show Aoyama, who leaned against the frame with his hand on his hip, clearly trying to strike a seductive pose. Kuda was glad the class had managed to convince Aoyama to make his room a little less bright ages ago, or else he might have been blinded once the door opened. "Ah, hello Kuji," Aoyama greeted, fluttering his eyelashes. "I've been eagerly awaiting your arrival." "Good morning, Yuga," Kuda stammered. He brought his other arm out from behind his back, and Aoyama gasped in delight when he saw a bouquet of sparkling roses. "These are for ye." He was startled when Aoyama practically ripped the flowers out of his hand and raised them to his nose for a deep sniff. "Oh Kuji, these are positively magnifique," the blonde gushed. "You truly didn't have to, I would have been happy with nothing. But oh, these are amazing. Wherever did you get them?" Kuda laughed nervously. I just bought them from a nearby flower shop and then sprinkled a bunch of glitter on them because I thought you'd like that." To Kuda's relief, Aoyama's response was to sigh dreamily. "Ah, nothing says romantique like adding your own personal touch." He shifted the bouquet to rest in his arms and smiled at the other boy. "Well, monsieur, I am quite thoroughly charmed. I can't wait to hear what else you have planned for us this fine day." "Oh, Kuda gulped again. "There's this vegetarian restaurant a few blocks from the school that I like to order food from. I figured I could take you there and we could have dinner together." "Oh no, is that a boring date idea? Should I have come up with something more exciting?" However, he once again had no need to worry, as Aoyama looked very excited by the idea. "Merveilleuse. That sounds wonderful, Kuji. Awesome. So, I'll come get you around 5 p.m.? 5 it is. Until then, mon beau maître de bête," Aoyama winked at Kuda before shutting the door. Kuda let out a relieved breath, and smiled as he turned and started heading for his own room to get ready. That was probably the most nervous Kuda had ever been, but he had done it. He was taking the shiniest boy in class on a date. Inside his room, Aoyama looked down at the roses in his hands and beamed. Kuda certainly was quite the gentleman, wasn't he? "Right on time, I see," Aoyama said as soon as he opened his bedroom door once more. It was later that day, right around when everyone started to get dinner. I wouldn't want to keep you waiting, Kuda replied. He blushed when Aoyama gave him a long glance over. Kuda had chosen to wear a white button-up shirt with some black jeans. Apparently, judging by Aoyama's leering eyes, he looked good. Why, you look really good, Yuga. Oh, thank you, darling. Aoyama did a little spin and struck a pose. He was dressed in a black long-sleeved shirt, his usual belt to control his laser, and a pair of purple jeans with matching purple boots. I spent hours trying to find the perfect outfit, but I think I did pretty well, Nan. You did really well, Kuda said. His but looks really good in those jeans, ASK focus Kuji. Are you ready to go? Aoyama nodded and shut his bedroom door, then leaned forward with a curious smirk. So, what is first on our agenda tonight, dear? Well, I thought it would be nice to walk to the restaurant together, Kuda answered. Ooh, a lovely evening stroll before dinner. How charmant. Aoyama clapped his hands in excitement. What a grand evening before us. Kuda giggled before he could stop himself. You're so dramatic, I love it. He froze when he realized what he just said. Dash. Aoyama stopped him by giving him a kiss on the cheek. Oh, Kuji dear, I know full well how dramatic I can be. Why do you think I do it? He then winked and took Kuda's hand in his own, causing the rock-headed boy to blush. Shall we go now? Oh, this is such a cute restaurant, Aoyama exclaimed once they arrived. The building was designed to resemble a traditional Japanese house, with many vines adorning the walls in intricate patterns. It almost seemed like some kind of plant monster was overtaking the restaurant, which was a perfect idea if their menu was completely vegetarian. Aoyama was in love. So chic. Kuda blushed and then started moving his hands. It really is nice. I've been here once or twice before, but I do prefer ordering the food to campus. It's easier for me that way. Aoyama smiled. I completely understand. A fine evening at home can be quite enjoyable. He wasn't bothered at all by the sudden switch to nonverbal communication. He knew Kuda was more comfortable using sign when in public. Well, let's not dawdle any longer, Kuji. Fine vegetarian dining awaits us. Aoyama cried, dramatically pointing his finger forward. He felt satisfied to see Kuda giggle at the action. Aoyama stepped forward and pulled the restaurant's front door open, gesturing with a bow for Kuda to go ahead. After you, darling. Kuda blushed and walked in, Aoyama following close behind. They approached the maitre d', who smiled at them. Good evening, gentlemen. Table for two? He asked. Yes, please, with a window view, if you could, Aoyama spoke up. Of course, please follow me. The maitre d' bowed before picking up two menus and leading them through the restaurant to a small table, right next to a window overlooking the street, much to Aoyama's joy. They thanked the maitre d' as they sat down, and the man bowed once more before walking away. Aoyama looked across the table to Kuda, and frowned when he noticed the other boy was glancing around the restaurant, biting his lip. Are you all right? Aoyama asked. Kuda nodded. It's just busier than I thought it would be. I'll be fine though. As long as I'm here with you. Aoyama laughed. Oh Kuji, you have such a way with words, no matter how you express them. He picked up the menu and started to look through it. I must admit, I'm not familiar with most vegetarian dishes. Perhaps you could make a recommendation? You know, part of me still can't believe our entire class is dating each other now, Aoyama remarked. They had ordered their food, and were now just relaxing as they waited for their food. Kuda nodded in agreement. Oh yeah, it's strange for sure. But I'm really excited about it. As am I, Kuji, Aoyama said. He got a devilish look on his face. But I must say I'm curious, what is it exactly you like about moi? Come on, don't do this to me now. Oh come on, Kuji, you know how much I love to hear about how fabulous I am. Aoyama replied, flipping his hair. So come on, lavish me with compliments. I demand it. Kuda looked extremely flustered, and Aoyama started to feel bad. Just as he was about to admit that he was just kidding, however, Kuda began to shyly sign. What? Your hair is really soft. Aoyama couldn't help but snort. But of course, my most distinguishing feature. My soft hair, he joked. Although to be serious it is quite soft. Kuda shook his head and continued to sign, becoming more animated and confident as he went on. That was the first thing I noticed about you. Your hair is so soft and pretty. Everything about you is really pretty. But your personality is also really beautiful. I love how hard you try to be the best hero you can be, even though you still have trouble controlling your quirk. And you're so smart. Speaking 3 languages is such an amazing accomplishment. You're just incredible, Yuga. How could anyone not like you? Kuda hadn't realized how fast he was signing until he realized Aoyama was holding his hand over his mouth, blushing. Startled, he started to blush himself. Sorry, I think I got a little carried away. Aoyama smiled. Don't be, thank you, he said. And may I say? You are quite beautiful yourself, Kuji. Inside and out. Kuji covered his face with his hands, flustered, before signing again. Come on, look at me. I'm nothing special. Kuji, if anyone looks at you and says you are nothing special, they deserve a kick straight to the nether regions, Aoyama said bluntly. Kuda started giggling helplessly. Well, I wouldn't go that far. Aoyama opened his mouth to say more, before he was interrupted by the waitress suddenly appearing with 2 steaming hot plates in her hands. Her bare hands. He hoped she had some kind of heat resistance quirk because otherwise ow. Here you go, she said cheerfully, setting the food down in front of them. Enjoy. Let me know what you think, Kuda signed. I'm going to dig in. I've been looking forward to this all day. Aoyama watched Kuda pick up his chopsticks and begin eating, and couldn't help but smile at the other boy as he closed his eyes and made an audible moan of pleasure from the food. Kuda seemed to realize what he had done because he blushed and grinned sheepishly back, before continuing to enjoy his plate. Deciding it was time to join in, Aoyama picked up his own utensils and picked up a good amount of rice with a bit of what looked like spinach leaf and strawberry, and took a bite. The minute the food touched Aoyama's tongue, he had only a single thought. This is absolutely murd. By some miracle, he managed to keep his disgust off of his face, and somehow chewed up the vile mockery of food into a mush before swallowing it. He gave Kuda one of the fakest smiles he had ever mustered. Delicious. Kuda smiled back. I'm so glad you like it. That one is one of my favorites. How? Aoyama thought. I see why it has quite the taste. To put it simply, it tasted like someone had blended together every rotten fruit and vegetable they could find, and then added far too many spices onto it. Surely the restaurant didn't consider this to be of good quality to serve to customers? However, Aoyama knew he would have to push through it and finish the meal. Kuda had been so nervous about this date already, Aoyama refused to make things awkward by admitting to disliking the food. Kuda would blame himself, Aoyama was sure of it, and he refused to see a sweetheart like him in distress. You can do this, Yuga. You are the shining hero, can't stop twinkling. You can get through one bad meal. Go beyond, plus ultra. With a determined grin, Aoyama took a second bite. Kuda winced as Aoyama's vomiting noises echoed throughout the restaurant bathroom. He rubbed the blonde's back in sympathy. So, I'm guessing you didn't really like the food? Aoyama could only moan in agony. Kuda sighed. I wish you had just told me you didn't like what you got. I know you have a sensitive stomach, he muttered. Blegha, Aoyama replied, his voice a little muffled due to being face down in a toilet. His face flashed green, and then he started puking once more. Kuda kept rubbing his back to try and comfort him, keeping his body protectively kneeling over Aoyama. Eventually, Aoyama's body didn't have anything left to throw up, and he slumped against the toilet, utterly defeated. Why am I cursed to always make such a fool of myself in front of people I want to impress? He wailed. Yuga, Kuda started, but was stopped when Aoyama looked up at him with tears in his eyes. I'm sorry, Kuji, Aoyama stuttered sadly. I know I shouldn't have forced myself to eat the food if I didn't like it, but I didn't want to seem rude. You were so excited to bring me here, it was your favorite restaurant, and instead I'm vomiting into a toilet like a heathen. I ruined our date. Yuga, you didn't ruin the date, Kuda replied. Aoyama scoffed disbelievingly, so Kuda continued. I'm serious. I had such a good time talking and eating with you. That may be, Aoyama continued, looking down at the tiled floor. But look at me now, I'm so repugnant. He covered his face with his hands, struggling to hold back humiliated tears. Kuda's heart broke to see Aoyama like this, but he thought he knew how he could fix it. Gently taking Aoyama's face in his hand, he turned his head to look up at him, before leaning down and giving him a soft kiss. When he broke the kiss and opened his eyes, Aoyama was staring at him in bewilderment. "You're wrong," Kuda whispered. "You're just as beautiful as you have ever been." To his surprise, Aoyama gave him a weak slap to the chest, unable to hide his fierce blush. "Diable Kuda, you don't kiss someone who just puked," the blonde screeched. "I do if it's you," Kuda responded. Aoyama was shocked into silence. Slowly, however, his sorrowful expression turned into one of relief and happiness. "You truly are a gentleman, Kuji," he whispered, throwing his arms around Kuda in a hug. Kuda returned the hug happily. It didn't matter if they were sitting on the floor of a bathroom and the smell of vomit hung in the air. It was still a perfect romantic moment. "Are you going to be okay?" Kuda asked once Aoyama had felt well enough to step outside the restaurant. The manager had been extremely apologetic, not charging them for their dinner at all. "Natin quiet pa, I will be fine," Aoyama replied. He took a single step, and then stopped and held his stomach, cheeks turning slightly green. Or perhaps not? Then Aoyama felt a strike of brilliance, and he looked at Kuda with a despairing look. "Oh, if only I had a big strong knight in shining armor to carry me home." Kuda rolled his eyes, but he was grinning. "Yeah, because that was very subtle Yuga," he said, stepping forward and easily picking the smaller boy up and into his arms before starting the journey back to campus. Aoyama giggled, wrapping his arms around Kuda's neck and giving him a kiss on the cheek. "Merci, maître de bête." The night that Class 3A was given official permission to take 2 weeks off from school so they could go on dates with each other, Shinso had to pinch himself at least 10 different times just to prove that he wasn't dreaming. He couldn't believe something like this was actually happening. He was going to go on a date with each of his classmates, all of whom he was just a tiny bit completely head over heels for. And the first of these first dates was with Satu. As Shinso walked to his bedroom to turn in for the night, he pondered what kind of date Satu would take him on. I would just assume something to do with baking, but that kind of thinking is too one-dimensional. Anyway, I probably won't hear anything from him about it until tomorrow. "Hey, Hitoshi, wait up." Or maybe right now, Shinso mumbled as he turned around to see the taller boy walk up to him with a big grin. "What's up, Rikido?" "Well, we're going on a date tomorrow," Satu said brightly. Shinso raised an eyebrow. "I'm aware. And I already have an idea. Have you ever been to Lake Shugamendo?" he asked. Shinso hummed, thinking of the large lake about half an hour away from the school. "No, not that I recall." "Perfect. Well, they have these boats you can rent for a few hours, and some of them are the perfect size for 2 people, so I thought we could get up tomorrow morning and go down there to rent one and spend the day on the lake together," Satu said. He looked very proud of himself, and Shinso was honestly impressed. That sounded like a great date idea. Still, he couldn't help but tease the sugary hero. "A romantic boat ride. Shall I bring my lace parasol?" Satu laughed. "Well, I'm not going to stop you if you do. Just be up and ready by 7. "Perfect, I'll be able to get my usual 2 hours of sleep." "I hope you're kidding." "Oh, and I'll also make sure to bring a lunch for us." "Well, of course," Shinso replied, smiling as he turned and continued on to his room. "If I showed up tomorrow and there was no food, I would divorce you on the spot." Satu blinked in confusion as Shinso turned around to give him one more smile and a wink before entering his room and shutting the door. "But we aren't married?" The next day, bright and early at 7, Satu knocked on Shinsu's bedroom door. "Morning, Hitoshi. You awake?" he called. After a moment, Satu heard footsteps, and the door opened to reveal Shinso, looking barely awake, but he was dressed at least. He was wearing a nice dark purple t-shirt and black shorts, which Satu thought paired nicely with his own yellow t-shirt and blue shorts. After all, no one wears pants to a lake. "You look good." Satu greeted him. "Ready to go?" Shinso blinked in a manner not unlike a zombie. "I changed my mind. I hate you and don't want to date you. How dare you make me wake up this early?" Satu smiled and held up a lunchbox. "I got up really early and made us some homemade lunch." Shinso stared at him in silence, before sighing and stepping out of his room, closing the door behind him. "All right, I'm ready." Don't worry, sleepyhead, Sata chuckled. The sun should wake you up once we get to the lake. I'm going to take a nap on the train, and I am reserving the right to use your shoulder as a pillow. I wouldn't expect anything less, Hitoshi. One train ride and a walk later, they arrived to the lake. Seeing it in person for the first time, Shinso was impressed. He knew Lake Shugemendo was big, but he didn't realize it was so big that he could be forgiven for thinking they had accidentally taken the train to the oceanside. Huh, it's not that busy, Sata commented. That's unusual for a Saturday morning. Who cares, less people to hog the lake. Shinso replied. He hooked his arm into Satu's and pulled him along down the dock to the boat rental building. An older man saw them approach and waved. Morning, boys, the dockmaster said. Boat for two? Yes, sir, Sata said, pulling out his wallet. We'll take it for, what do you think, Hitoshi? Maybe about 2 hours? Shinso guessed. He was unsure what the appropriate amount of time to spend on a boat with a boy you wanted to kiss was. 2 hours it is, the dockmaster said. Once Sata had paid, they walked down the dock and chose a brown boat at the end of the dock. Shinso furrowed his eyebrows and took a tentative step inside, slowly lowering himself into the boat until he was sitting. He heard a snort and looked up to see Sata smiling at him in amusement. Sorry, it was just funny to see how hard you were trying not to fall into the water, he said, climbing into the boat after him. Untying it, he pushed it off the dock, then picked up 2 oars lying in the boat and stretched his arms. You just sit back and enjoy yourself, Hitoshi, Sata said, starting to row themselves away from the dock. The SS Satu is ready to sail? Shinso laughed and leaned back, closing his eyes. Glad to know someone knows how to treat me like the king I am. Sata rolled his eyes. And what are you the king of exactly? King of sitting in boats looking sexy, of course, Shinso replied smoothly. Although you could give me a run for my money. Shinso smirked as Sata blushed, and watched happily as Sata's rowing showed off his muscles in his arms. I'd like to thank not only God but also Jesus for this boat ride, he thought to himself. Eventually, they rowed far enough from the shore that they were completely surrounded by water. Shinso looked out and made a noise of awe. Damn, this lake is really big. I feel like I'm in the middle of the ocean. Yeah, it's really huge, Satu agreed. Shinso frowned when he noticed the other boy was breathing a little heavier than normal. He'd been rowing for a while, he was probably getting tired out. Hey, you want to stop and eat? Shinso asked. Satu nodded, setting the oars down with a sigh of relief. Yeah. A break sounds perfect. Sata reached down to open the lunchbox, causing Shinso's mouth to water when he pulled out a pair of delicious-looking pork onigirazu. Fuck, that looks so good. Thanks, Sata said, handing him his onigirazu before taking a bite of his own. I try my best. Seriously, Rikido, I'm surprised no one's proposed to you yet. Your cooking is the shit, Shinso said. He took a first bite, and nearly cried at the flavors exploding on his tongue. Like, for real, with all you cook for us, everyone in Class 3A owes you about 50 blowjobs each? Sata nearly dropped his food in shock. Hitoshi, you can't just say stuff like that. I only speak the truth. Sata shook his head and laughed. Only you, Hitoshi, he thought, taking another bite. He's right though, I'm a cooking god. The two finished their food in a comfortable silence, and soon both boys were simply relaxing on the boat, watching the calmness of the lake. Sata smiled to himself. This is nice. He looked over and was a little concerned to see Shinso frowning at him. Just as he was about to ask if something was wrong, Shinso abruptly stood up, causing Sata to yelp and grab the sides of the boat as it rocked at the action, trying to keep it steady. Whoa, what the heck, Hitoshi, you're gonna fall in. Lie down, Shinso ordered. Sata blinked in confusion. What? Lie down, we're gonna cuddle, Shinso said, stepping closer to him and kneeling down. Sata blinked again. You wanna cuddle in a boat in the middle of a lake? Are you sure about that? Rikido, don't you dare deny me this opportunity, Shinso said in a comically serious tone. Now be a good baradaddy and let me rest gently upon the giant pillow you call your chest. Jesus, Hitoshi, Sata muttered, covering his blushing face with his hand, but he did not stop Shinso from pushing him down onto the floor of the boat and laying on top of him. Shinso sighed once he was comfortable, closing his eyes and nuzzling into Sato's shirt, causing the bigger boy to blush even harder at the sight. Okay, that is unfairly cute. Sato looked up to the sky and found a feeling of peace quickly overtaking him. Lying here, with the boat being gently rocked by the water of the lake and Shinso resting against him, was quite calming. He wrapped one arm around Shinso's body and put the other behind his head, making himself more comfortable. He wasn't sure how long the two just laid together in complete silence, but Sato didn't feel any need to break it. This was nice. Do you remember when I first transferred into Class 1A? Shinso asked suddenly. Sato looked down at the boy lying on his chest and wrinkled his eyebrows thoughtfully. Yeah, kind of. To be honest, I always forget you weren't in the hero course from the very beginning. Mineta dropped out of UA right after the USJ attack, so we never really got to know him. Sato frowned. The only thing I remember about him is that he was a huge pervert and made all the girls in class uncomfortable, so it was actually probably a good thing that he decided to quit. Really? Shinso looked irritated on behalf of their female classmates. Good riddance then. Yeah? Sato continued. Anyway, why are you bringing it up? Shinso smiled and started to draw circles on Sato's chest with his finger. Well, I remember riding my bike to school, more nervous than I'd ever been before. My dream was coming true, sure, but I was so scared that the hero class would be just as bad as every other class I'd had. That you would take one look at the freak with the villain quirk who was an asshole to your class during the sports festival, and that you guys would never accept me as one of you. Hitoshi Sato began comfortingly, but Shinso kept talking. So I'm standing outside the door to class, trying to act cool while freaking out in my head. I finally decide to just get it over with, and I open the door. The purple-haired boy looked up at Sato. And there you were, holding an ube cake? Sato gasped. Oh wow, now I remember. The week after the sports festival, Aizawa told us you were transferring into class the next day, so I stayed up all night baking that cake. He started to blush. I wanted to make you feel welcome. It worked, Shinso said softly. All of you welcomed me with open arms, but that memory has always stuck with me. Seeing you, with that big smile and that purple cake. Shinso paused and gave Sato a quizzical look. Holy shit, how am I just now realizing that you made me a purple cake? Did you do that just because of my hair color? Sato grinned sheepishly and Shinso rolled his eyes. You're such a dork. His smile turned loving. But you're a dork who baked a cake for a total stranger just because you wanted him to feel welcome in his new class, and helped him start to believe that maybe things were finally going to be better for him. People really don't give you enough credit, Rikido. You're probably one of the nicest people I've ever met. No wonder your hero name is Sugar Man. You're so damn sweet. Shinso crawled up Sato's chest until he was close enough to catch the other boy's lips in a kiss. Not to mention really sexy, he whispered. Sato responded by pulling Shinso back down to kiss him again. And again. And again. And a few more times, just to make sure. Of what he didn't know. Maybe how much he loved kissing Hitoshi. The dock master was pissed as he watched the two teenage boys finally return to shore. He stomped over to the boat as it came up next to the marina, and glared at the two miscreants. You were supposed to return that boat 2 hours ago, he shouted down at them. What on earth were you boys doing? The dock master paused as both boys turned red, and then suddenly noticed some suspicious-looking purple bruises adorning the neck of the one with the large lips. Wait, don't tell me that they were. He raised up his hands. Never mind. Just go pay the late return fee, okay? Shinso watched the flustered dock master depart, and he looked at Sato with a wince. Might have gotten a little carried away, he mumbled, rubbing his neck in embarrassment. Yeah, Sato agreed. Next time let's save it for back at the dorms. Shinsu's face lit up. I like the way you think, Rikido. Kaminari rocked back and forth on his heels, swinging his arms as he grinned at Bakugu. The class had just sorted out who they were all going on dates with first, and everyone was getting ready for bed, but Kaminari had jumped in front of Bakugu as soon as the other blonde tried to go to his room. Bakugu just glared at him. What? Come on, Kaken, don't leave me in suspense. Kaminari cried, grabbing onto his arm. What are we doing tomorrow for our date? Bakugo rolled his eyes and shook him off. Like I'm gonna tell you, he said. This shit's supposed to be a surprise. Kaminari pouted, but then he got a wicked idea. He let out an exaggerated sigh. Well, I suppose I shouldn't get my hopes up anyway, he said, putting a lot of fake sadness into his voice. Bakugo eyed him suspiciously. The fuck is that supposed to mean? Kaminari shrugged. I mean, out of everyone in class, I guess you're probably the least romantic out of us. So I just realize I probably shouldn't expect anything special, you know? Kaminari yelped when Bakugo suddenly grabbed him by the collar and pulled him forward, getting into his face with a seething snarl. You think I can't be romantic, you asshole? Well, guess what? I am gonna take you on a date that is so goddamn romantic you'll piss yourself in fear over how romantic I can be. Kaminari blinked. Cool. Hey, since we're basically so close we're touching lips, you wanna make out? Bakugo let go of his shirt and walked off. Go to bed, Pikachu. All will come on, please? No. Kakain. Go to fucking bed, god damn it. Although he always enjoyed teasing Bakugo, Kaminari was starting to worry that he had perhaps gone a little too far the night before, because it was almost 5 p.m. the next day, and Bakugo still hadn't shown his face even once. All day he had sat around the dorms, bored out of his mind, and growing more and more jealous as his classmates left to go out on their own dates, or as they returned to the dorms from what had clearly been a good date. Hell, Kaminari was beginning to fear he wasn't going on a date at all. The electric blonde started to twiddle his thumbs nervously as he sat on the couch in the common room. Crap, he whispered. I hope I didn't piss him so much he doesn't want to date me at all anymore. Oi, Pikachu! Kaminari screamed in surprise and spun around to see Bakugo standing behind the couch. Date time. Get up and follow me, was all the other blonde said before he started walking away. Kaminari gaped at him for a second, then scrambled frantically off the couch, nearly tripping in his haste to catch up to him, worry now replaced with excitement. Awesome! Kaminari cheered, catching up to stand next to the other blonde. Man, I'm so excited this is finally happening. I was really worried I fucked up yesterday, but obviously I shouldn't have worried because you're here and, wait, where are we going? Kaminari finally noticed that Bakugo was not leading them outside, but deeper into the dorms. To the stairs, Bakugo replied. Kaminari frowned. Why the stairs? Because that's how you get to the roof. Our date is happening on the roof? Yeah. Kaminari thought that over. You're not going to try to push me off the roof again, right? That was only funny the first 3 times. Of course I'm not gonna fucking push you. Bakugo shouted. He growled in frustration, then surprised Kaminari by slipping his hand into his. Will you just come on? Kaminari smiled and allowed Bakugo to direct him forward. Okay. Just so you know, I like the hand-holding, but this is totally not proving my assessment on how romantic you are wrong. To Kaminari's confusion, Bakugo just smirked at him. Oh, wait and see, Pikachu. Wait and fucking see. When Kaminari stepped through the door and onto the roof of Heights Alliance, he froze and gasped in shock. Oh wow, Kaminari whispered. Beside him, Bakugo was still smirking. Before him what appeared to be a rooftop picnic. A red blanket had been spread out onto the roof, and on top of it sat a picnic basket, a cooler, and 2 pillows, one colored orange and one colored yellow. Next to the blanket was a portable heater, which was great because Kaminari had totally forgotten to put on warm clothes at all. It was positioned in the perfect place to watch the sunset over the Mizutofu horizon. But still, this was all very sweet. Okay, I'm on a date with Katsuki and not a weird romantic clone, right? Where did you get the heater? Was somehow the first thing Kaminari asked. Bakugo shrugged. Got it from Ponytail, he replied. He walked forward and plopped down onto the blanket. He frowned when he saw Kaminari was still standing by the door, and beckoned him over with a jerk of his head. Don't just stand there with your mind open, Pikachu, come sit down. Kaminari shook himself out of his shock and walked over, sitting down on the blanket next to Bakugo. He gasped and immediately started to wiggle his toes into the fabric. Holy crap, this is so sooftuft. Yeah it is, Bakugo said, sounding smug. He opened the cooler and pulled out 2 sodas. Borrowed it from my old lady, she's got all the good shit. Wow, Kaminari accepted the soda. Is that why you were gone all day? Yeah, you think I can just magically make all this shit appear out of thin air? You got to plan this kind of crap? Bakugo scoffed. Kaminari frowned. But if you got the heater from Momo, couldn't you have gotten some of this other stuff from her too? Bakugo's left eye twitched. Whatever. Why the fuck you asking so many questions anyway? All my effort not good enough for you or something? Bakugo stopped and took a deep breath. Sorry, I know that's not what you meant. Ah, it's okay, Kaken, Kaminari said happily. You calmed down so quickly just then. Are you still going to sessions with Hound Dog? Yeah, Bakugo admitted, taking a sip of his soda. Turns out getting rid of 15 years worth of anger issues takes longer than one to solve, but it's been helping, I think. That's okay, man. Kaminari replied with a huge smile. You don't need to change overnight. As long as you keep trying. We're all so proud of you. Bakugo immediately looked away, trying to hide his blush, even though Kaminari totally knew. Smiling to himself in satisfaction, Kaminari opened the picnic basket and gasped in delight. Oh my god, you made hamburgers. This is the best night of my life. Bakugo snorted. I'm lucky you're so easy to please, Pikachu. Kaminari chewed on the last bit of his hamburger, eyes sparkling as he watched the sun disappear from the sky. Man, I always forget how pretty the sunset is around here. What, you never watch it from your window? Bakugo asked, having already finished his food. Nah, I'm usually in the common room playing video games around right now. You know you could be studying in your room like a normal student most nights, dude. Then maybe you wouldn't be fighting raccoon eyes over who has the worst grades in class, Bakugo said with a smirk. Kaminari groaned. Oh, low bow Baku bro. Besides, if I actually got good grades, then what would be the point of our squad study sessions? I ask you? I would have less fucking headaches for one, Bakugo replied. Kaminari laughed. Yeah, probably. He took another sip from his soda, and then looked over at Bakugo. So, romantic rooftop picnic with the sunset? This was your big plan to make me piss myself in fear? To Kaminari's amusement, Bakugo actually looked embarrassed. That's not what I actually wanted to happen, you know, he muttered. Well duh, Kaminari giggled. I'm just saying this was unexpected. Bakugo didn't reply, and instead he just laid down on the blanket. You think that sunset was nice? He asked. Come on, lie down and look up. Okay? Kaminari did as the other blonde said, laying down and looking directly up to the sky, and he felt his heart flutter. Oh my god. The sky was absolutely covered in stars. Kaminari wasn't sure he had ever seen so many stars in his life. It was like a million fireflies were dancing above his head. Dude, this is beautiful. How is this possible? I thought you couldn't see stars in the city? I'm not sure, Bakugo replied. I came up here one night to think, and I noticed that you could see basically all of goddamn space if you hang out. Not sure why. Probably somebody's bullshit quirk knowing this psycho world. Wow, Kaminari was in genuine awe. It's so pretty. Kaminari tilted his head and beamed at Bakugo. Thanks for bringing me up here, Katsuki. I love this. Bakugo once again turned away to hide his red face. Alright, yeah cool, you're welcome, now shut up and look at the sky. For the next hour or so, the two blondes lied back and gazed up at the night sky. As it turned out, Bakugo was actually pretty knowledgeable about stars and constellations because of course he was the overachiever, so they started to play a game where Bakugo would point out a constellation, and Kaminari would make up whatever insane backstory for it he could think of, before Bakugo would reveal what it actually was and chide him for being an idiot. At one point, they were even shocked to see a comet fly across the sky, causing Kaminari to practically shake with excitement. Even Bakugo had been struck silent with awe by the sight. Kaminari sighed with happiness, closing his eyes and hooking his hands over his stomach. Man, Kaken, you seem to never run out of ways to surprise me, but I got to hand it to you. I feel quite wooed right now. Hell yeah. Not bad for someone whose personality is flaming crap mixed with garbage. At Dunt's face. Kaminari looked over at Bakugo, who was smirking at him, and tilted his head. What are you talking about? Bakugo rolled his eyes. Remember? What you said on the bus to the USJ the first week of school, the first time villains attacked us? Kaminari's mouth dropped open, and then he burst into laughter. Ah, oh my god, are you really still mad about that? That was literally 3 years ago. And I barely knew you back then. And you were a huge dick, by the way. Bakugo waved his hand dismissively. Doesn't matter. I told you I was gonna woo the fuck out of you, and I did it. So that means you gotta take it back? Kaminari raised an eyebrow. Pardon me? You said I couldn't be romantic, Bakugo repeated. He laid down and crossed his arms behind his head, baring his teeth at Kaminari in a mad grin. That has always been way hotter than it needs to be, Kaminari thought. Take it back? Kaminari tapped his chin and pretended to think it over, then shook his head. Nope. Fuck you, this was romantic as shit. You said so yourself. You didn't think I could come up with something this romantic. I proved you wrong, so that means you fucking have to take it back. Calm down, I'm just kidding. Kaminari laughed, raising his hands defensively. I take it back. I take it all back. This was super romantic. The electric blonde's smile became even brighter. Seriously, tonight was awesome. I had a really great time being up here with you, Katsuki. Bakugo looked a little too pleased with himself, so Kaminari couldn't help but add a quick dig. Even if your personality is still totally flaming crap mixed with garbage? When Bakugo sat up with a furious expression, clearly getting ready to yell, Kaminari leaned over and kissed him. The other boy's eyes widened, and then closed as he wrapped his arms around Kaminari and pulled him to his chest, deepening the kiss. They remained locked together for a few more moments before Kaminari broke the kiss and gave Bakugo a soft smile. But as it turns out, he said, I'm kind of into it. Bakugo scoffed, but he couldn't keep the fond grin off of his face as he lied back down, pulling Kaminari down with him. You're such an idiot, Denki. Kaminari beamed, and happily snuggled into Bakugo's side, resting his hand on his chest. Bakugo clasped it with his own, using his other arm to hold Kaminari tight to him, and the two boys looked back up to the dark sky. The stars truly were beautiful tonight. Every morning, Ida made sure to wake up promptly at 5 and go on a run around the UA campus. It was important to keep up one's physical health and stamina after all. He usually completed about 5 laps around the school before returning to the dorms to get started with the rest of his day. This morning, Ida found himself waking up filled with nerves about his date with Shuji that day, and he ended up doing about 10 extra laps just to try to shake the nervousness out of him. Pushing the door to Heights Alliance open, Ida gasped for breath. He marched to the kitchen and grabbed a water bottle from the fridge. As he chugged the refreshing cool drink, he scolded himself internally for being so out of sorts. Shuji was an incredibly kind and respectful young man. There was no reason to be so anxious about something as simple as a date. No matter how many times Ida told himself that, he was still nervous. He looked up in surprise when the other student in question entered the kitchen. Oh, Mezu. Hello. I wasn't expecting you to be up so early. Well, I knew you liked to get up to run, Shuji replied, opening the fridge and getting his own water bottle. Ida watched in fascination as he used one hand to open it, then turned another of his hands into a mouth which drank from the bottle like a baby. So I wanted to get up early too to ask you something. Is it about our date? Ida asked, straightening up. Yes, Shuji's voice sounded a little unsure, and Ida started to feel his anxiety return. You see, every 2 weeks, I like to use my Saturday to go volunteer at an orphanage in town. But I realized that this whole class dating thing lined up with my next volunteer day. I know it's not really what most people would think when they think date, but I wanted to ask if you would like to accompany me. Ida was surprised by the request, but quickly recovered and smiled. Why, that sounds wonderful. I didn't know you partook in volunteer work. I would love to join you. Shuji visibly relaxed, and Ida guessed he was smiling under his mask. Perfect. They usually expect me around 10, so let's get ready and meet back here, okay? Ida nodded. I will see you then. Shuji nodded back and departed, leaving Ida alone in the kitchen. He couldn't help but feel a lot of love and admiration for the other boy. Volunteering at an orphanage? What a heroic thing to do. I just hope none of these kids are like that Koda kid. I would prefer not to get punched in the scrotum today. So, when did you start volunteering here? Ida asked as the boys approached what looked like a school. Ida had dressed in a blue polo shirt and his nicest jeans, while Shuji was wearing his usual green tank top and a pair of black track pants. At the start of the year, Shuji started, sounding embarrassed. I'm actually not the best with kids. But I really want to be a hero that kids look up to, so I decided it would be a good idea to learn how to, interact with them. An honorable motive indeed. The boys entered the building and were greeted by a woman in a pink dress. Good morning, Shuji-kun. Oh, hello, I don't believe we've met. Hello, ma'am, Ida bowed. My name is Ida Tenya. He wanted to come volunteer with me today. Is that all right, Tamai-sama? Shuji asked. Of course. The more the merrier. Come, Ida-kun, come meet the children. Tamai said, leading them both through the building until they came outside to a playground, where about 15 kids were all playing together. Seeing the children, Ida immediately realized why Shuji might have chosen to volunteer here. Most of the kids seemed to have some kind of physical mutation, ranging from a boy with 2 extra ears to a girl who had the body of a spider instead of legs. Children, look who's here. Tamai called. Tentacle. The kids swarmed Shuji instantly, and Ida jumped back in surprise. The kids were all shouting excitedly, with several jumping up to grab onto his 6 arms. Shuji didn't look bothered at all, though, and he lifted those arms into the air, letting the kids hang from them like monkey bars, causing them to cheer in delight. Hey guys, Shuji spoke up. This is my friend Tenya. Can you say hi to him? Hi Tenya. The kids all yelled together. Ida smiled and was about to greet them, but the kids had already lost interest in him and returned their attention to Shuji. He found that he didn't mind though. Watching Shuji interact with the kids was rewarding enough on its own. Tentacle. Play heroes and villains with us, one boy cried. Shuji laughed. Of course. Who shall I be? Be the villain. And we're the heroes who are gonna stop you from evil, a girl with butterfly wings yelled. Oh, you think you can stop Dash? Shuji crouched down and spread out all 6 of his arms in a faux villainous fashion. Me, the great and terrible Tentacle? Well, then face me, puny heroes. The kids all screamed and began running, laughing their heads off as Shuji began to chase all of them. Ida felt his heart beat faster in his chest watching Shuji play with the kids. And Shuji had said that he was bad with kids? He looked like he couldn't be more in his element. Why had he been so nervous to spend time with him? This was just proving what Ida already knew, that Shuji was a kind, honorable, and incredible man. His arms were pretty nice too. Ida felt a hand tug on his pants. Excuse me? A small voice asked. He looked down and saw the girl with the spider legs. Are you Tentacle's boyfriend? She asked, staring up at him inquisitively. You're looking at him like Tamai-sama looks at her husband? Ida blushed and looked over to Shuji, who had fallen to the ground defeated, with the other kids all climbing on top of him and yelling in victory. He couldn't help but smile. I would like to think that, yes, I am. Well, you better be really nice to him, mister, the spider girl cried. He's super duper amazing and is going to be the best hero ever. Watching Shuji surprise one of the kids with a hug, Ida couldn't help but agree. He looked down at her. I promise, young one. The spider girl nodded. But now come play with us, she yelled, pulling him along. Shuji saw them approach and stood up. Ah, another hero, he crowed menacingly, causing all the kids to gasp. Have you come to try and defeat the fearsome and powerful Tentacle? Ida smirked and crouched into a fighting pose. Why, yes, evildoer. Prepare to face justice from the turbo hero, Ingenium. And his loyal sidekick Spiderling, the spider girl cheered, copying his pose. Ida grinned at her, then turned back to Shuji, who looked extremely amused. Onward, Spiderling. Charge. How could you betray me like this? Spiderling, or Ce as Ida had learned her name was, shrugged from where she was sitting on his chest. You were losing and I wanted to be on the winning team. Sorry. Ida huffed, but he was trying hard not to laugh. My own sidekick. I may never recover from the trauma. A deep laugh caused both of them to look up. Shuji was standing above him, hands on his waist, and Ida blushed. Curses, he is too handsome, even when upside down. Essie, Tamai-sama said to go inside and get ready for lunch, Shuji said. Okay. He stood up and scuttered off. Thank you for playing with us, Mr. Ingenium. Shuji held out his hand and helped Ida to his feet. Sorry, hero, he said, sounding not at all sorry. But you've been defeated. Ida put on a fierce expression and pointed at Shuji. You may have won today, villain, but justice will always prevail. Ida's stomach suddenly rumbled. The two were frozen in shock, before both breaking down into giggles. But perhaps justice can happen after we eat? Well, first we need to help prepare the food for the kids, Shuji said. It's part of the volunteering. Of course, Ida exclaimed. Well, let's not waste time. Show me to the kitchen if you will. Tamai led Shuji and Ida into the kitchen, where all the ingredients had already been set up. All week the kids have been asking for you to come and make them yakimeshi, so I got everything ready for you. You think you can make it just as good as last time? The woman asked playfully. Of course, Tamai-sama, Shuji replied. He turned to Ida. I'll chop up the vegetables. Can you cook the rice? Absolutely. I will not let you down, Tamai, Ida said, bowing at the waist towards her. She giggled and walked out. Thank you, boys. Just bring it out when it's ready. Shuji and Ida quickly got to work on preparing the kids' lunch. They made small conversation as they worked, before eventually lulling into a comfortable silence. Once the rice was cooking, Ida began preparing the eggs, but he paused and looked over to Shuji, who was dutifully cutting up the veggies. So, I noticed that a lot of the children here have physical mutations, Ida remarked. Shuji nodded. That's right. It's mostly why I decided to volunteer here. I thought you said you wished to learn how to interact with children? Ida asked. Well, yes, but Shuji fell silent. He set down his knife and sighed. I also wanted to work somewhere where none of the kids would be scared of me, I guess. Ida thought that might be the case, and it saddened him. What child would be afraid of you? He couldn't help but ask. A lot of them, Shuji said, sounding resigned. It's why I started wearing my mask in the first place, because my mouth scared everyone around me. That's ridiculous, Ida cried. There's nothing about you to fear whatsoever. My entire hometown would disagree, Tenya. Yes, but Ida sighed. I'm sorry, what I meant is, I know you. So I can't wrap my head around how anyone can look at you and be scared, and not see what a kind, wonderful, selfless person you are. What a hero you are. Shuji looked stunned, and he blushed as he looked down at his hands. Thank you, Tenya, that means so much to me. He clenched one fist in determination. And that's another reason why I came here. Growing up, I had no heroes to give me hope that things would be better, and that's why I want to become that hero. One who people who are different can look to and find hope in. Shuji felt a hand on his shoulder and looked up to see Ida smiling lovingly at him. You already are, especially to these kids. Ida gently lifted his hand and used it to grip the edge of Shuji's mask. He paused, waiting to see if Shuji wanted him to stop. When Shuji did nothing, Ida pulled the mask down just enough to reveal his mouth. It was a large mouth, the cracked edges resting just under Shuji's ears, with too many teeth for it to ever shut properly. And Ida supposed that, yes, some ignorant people might see it and think monster and be afraid. But Ida did not hesitate to lean forward and kiss him, gently tugging Shuji closer to him with his arms. And to me, he whispered against the mutant boy's mouth. Neither of them knew how long they stood there in each other's embrace, until they heard a throat clear behind them. Jumping apart, they saw Tamai smirking at them joyfully. Not to break up your fun, boys, but the kids are quite hungry. And I think the rice is burning. Oh no. I'll fix this so it'll be hot. Once they brought out the food, Ida wasn't surprised when all of the kids demanded that Shuji sit with them to eat too. However, he was absolutely shocked when insisted that she sit on his lap while she ate lunch. Wouldn't you be more comfortable on the ground with the others? He asked her, keeping his arms around her to make sure her 8 legs didn't fall off. Issy shook her head, taking a bite of rice. Oh, I love Tentacle, but Ingenium is awesome too. You're my new co-favorite hero. Ida wasn't even ashamed of how teary-eyed he got hearing that. Nearby, Shuji watched the exchange happily. I knew Tenya would be great with the kids, he thought. He's basically a big brother already. Once the kids finished eating, he and Ida played with the kids for another hour before Tamai came outside and clapped her hands. Okay kids, it's time for Shuji-kun and Ida-kun to leave, she said. The kids all began to whine and protest, circling the two boys. Please don't leave yet, we're having so much fun, the boy with 4 ears demanded. Ida began to chop at the air. He had quickly realized the kids were quite entertained by this, so he did it with even more exaggeration than usual. Don't worry, children. Tentacle and Ingenium will return to play again before you even know it. Ida paused, then looked over at Shuji, hesitance in his face. I mean, if that is okay with you, Mezu? Shuji smiled. Absolutely, Tenya. The kids all cheered, excited to hear that not one but 2 heroes would be returning to see them again. Shuji and Ida spent the next several minutes saying goodbye to each child. This was last, and the spider girl hopped into the air and caught both of them in a surprise hug. I'll miss you guys. I can't wait to see you again. And when you get big and become real heroes, then I'm gonna come to your agency and be the greatest sidekick ever. Ida smiled and ruffled her hair. As long as you don't betray me again, then I believe that will work out wonderfully, Spiderling. We'll miss you too, Shuji said, poking her cheek. She giggled and batted his hand away. Goodbye. Bye, she said, before running off to catch up with the other kids. As they walked out, Ida stopped outside. I am actually a little reluctant to leave, he admitted. Shuji laughed, and slipped one of his hands into Ida's. Yeah. These kids are incredible, aren't they? Ida laughed too, and they walked off hand in hand. Yes, they are. We should bring the rest of the class too, they would love that, I'm sure. That's a good idea, Shuji said. But maybe not at first. I kind of like the idea of having this all to ourselves. Just the two of us. Ida grinned. So do I. Okay, come on, you can do this. Come on, it's no big deal, just walk up to him and talk. He was really excited about this last night, so it's gonna be fine. Just man up and walk over to him. Stop being so nervous. Come on, Idru, you can do this. In what must have been an unusual sight to anyone who saw it, the normally loud and boisterous Kirishima was hiding behind a corner, occasionally peeking out to look at a certain green-haired young man who was sitting at one of the tables in the common room reading a book. Kirishima thought he had come up with a pretty awesome idea for a date with Midoriya, but when he had come downstairs to find him, he saw Midoriya and his beautiful everything, and completely froze up, accidentally using hardening as well, as if it wasn't embarrassing enough. So now he had spent the last 10 minutes trying to psych himself up enough to just go talk to him. Come on, you've been friends for 2 years. Stop acting so unmanly and do it. Do it. Kirishima whispered furiously to himself, slapping himself for good measure. After what felt like forever, he took a deep breath and turned around the corner, putting on a smile and acting like he was totally fine. He was about 82% successful. Hey Midobro, he called, waving. Midoriya looked up from his book and grinned as he saw him approach, nearly giving Kirishima a heart attack from the cuteness of it, but he persevered. Good morning, Idru. So, Kirishima leaned onto the table and smiled flirtatiously. You, me, and a day at the arcade? What do you think? Midoriya gasped, and his eyes brightened in excitement. That sounds like a great date idea. I haven't been to the arcade since, oh wow, I can't even remember. Perfect, Kirishima replied, internally pumping his fist in satisfaction. How about we take an hour to get ready, and then we head out to the arcade downtown? That sounds great, Midoriya said, standing up. Then, to Kirishima's surprise, he gave the red-haired boy a quick peck on the cheek before smiling. I'll see you in an hour. Midoriya turned around and headed over to his room, leaving Kirishima to gape after him. After a second, he whooped. All right, go Kirishima. Who's the man? You the man. Midoriya looked through his wallet. I think I brought enough money for tokens, but I'm not sure if I have enough for food too. Sitting next to him on the train downtown, Kirishima looked at him in confusion. What are you talking about? You didn't need to bring money. But we can't go into arcades for free, and we will probably get hungry, and arcade food is kind of gross but also weirdly good so dash. No, I mean I'm paying for everything. Kirishima interrupted him with a laugh. I'm the one taking you on this date after all. Well, I know that's usually how dates go, Midoriya said, reluctantly putting his wallet back into his wallet. But I feel bad about the idea of making you pay for everything. Dude, come on, you're not making me do it. Kirishima insisted. I'm happy to. I want you to have a great time. It would be super unmanly of me to make you pay for anything on our first date. Midoriya raised an eyebrow. But if I insist on paying and you don't let me, isn't that unmanly of you to disregard my wants and opinions? Don't turn my entire philosophy against me like this, Izuku. Seriously, don't worry about it. I got this. Midoriya rolled his eyes, but smiled. Alright, he said. That's quite chivalrous of you, AG. Kirishima shrugged, but was smiling too. I try. Oh, hell yeah, this is awesome. Kirishima cheered as they entered the arcade. The two quickly made their way to the token machines, where Kirishima kept his word and paid for their tokens. With the sweet golden coins in hand, the arcade had become their kingdom. It was time to play. What do you want to play first? Midoriya asked. Well, you're the one I'm trying to woo here, Kirishima retorted, smirking. What do you want to play first? Midoriya looked around at the many games filling the building, and then saw one that made his eyes light up. Ooh, let's play the All Might game. Why am I not surprised? Kirishima thought to himself, happily following after Midoriya as the green-haired boy rushed over to the game in question. It's a two-player game, so we can do it together. Midoriya explained, beaming. Ooh, do you want to have a contest to see who can get the most points? Kirishima smiled and got ready at the controls. Sure, that sounds fun. But I got to warn you, man, I'm kind of a pro at this game. Midoriya smirked. Do you really think you're going to beat me at an All Might game? Me? Oh, be still my heart. Well, I'll try my best. Kirishima vowed. Unfortunately, he probably should have seen his incredible loss coming. Kirishima sighed while Midoriya cheered, his score almost 2 million points ahead of his own. I think I'll take all of these, Midoriya said in a devilish tone, swiping up all the tickets to himself. Ah man, Kirishima whined. He looked around the arcade and spotted a drumming game. Here, I'll challenge you to a rematch. Winner gets to keep all the tickets. You're on. Midoriya cried. Both boys took off running towards the other game, their competitive drives launching into overdrive. Let the battle begin. Ah shoot, Kirishima cried, pounding his fists in frustration. How are you so good at this game? You just have to learn how to keep the beat, Midoriya said, twirling his tickets around his finger and smirking at him. Frantically looking around, Kirishima pointed towards a racing game. Alright, rematch number 2. This time I'll beat you for sure. Son of a bitch. Wow, Midoriya sounded genuinely amazed. I wasn't expecting to win that one too. Okay, let's go to Pac-Man now. Are you sure, AG? You seem a little intense. Like, more than usual. I'm fine. It's the spirit of competition. It's running through my veins. Now come on. Rematch. Damn it. Rematch. Crap. Rematch. Shoot. Rematch. 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 Are you okay, Ijiru? Midoriya asked, looking very worried. From his position laying face down on the floor of the arcade, Kirishima whined in despair. I feel like I've failed my forefathers or something. Midoriya rubbed the back of his head and chuckled. I can start throwing the games if it will make you feel better? Kirishima snorted, then got to his feet. Nah, that'd just make me feel worse if you weren't giving it your all. Alright, as much as I'm enjoying getting my ass kicked repeatedly, I gotta go take a leak. Oh, that's fine, Midoriya replied. I'll wait here, and when you get back I'll make sure to kick your ass 1 or 2 more times. Kirishima smiled. So cocky, he leaned forward and gave Midoriya an exaggeratedly sloppy kiss on the cheek. But man, is it doing things for me? Midoriya laughed and shoved him away. Don't be so gross. Kirishima winked at him and walked away towards the restrooms. Midoriya watched him go with a happy smile, before turning back to the fighting game they had been playing and setting up a match against the CPU. However, he quickly found himself stuck on the character select screen. Kazumi has speed on her side, but I also haven't played her much. I'm better at playing Hwoarang, but I shouldn't limit myself to only one character. It would improve my own enjoyment of the game if I attempted to expand my skill sets, so maybe a character I don't play as often would be the better choice. Whoa, Deku, is that you? Midoriya was startled out of his muttering, and looked up at the voice. Who called me? I didn't think anyone else was gonna be. Oh shit. A taller brunette boy the same age as Midoriya was standing in front of him, looking shocked. Then his smile turned into a smirk. Wow, it's been a while, hasn't it, Deku? Midoriya laughed nervously. Hi Uji. It has been a long time, hasn't it? Crap, it's one of the boys who used to follow Kakin around back at Aldra. I don't suppose it's too much to ask that he's not a dick anymore? I should let the owner know you're here. He wouldn't want a quirkless loser like you ruining the vibe after all. I suppose it was too much to ask. Midoriya had been a little uneasy seeing one of his old bullies, but now he was genuinely annoyed. Are you serious? I haven't spoken to you in 3 years and that is what you decide to say to me? Maybe you should try to mature a little, then we'll talk. Uji looked shocked that Midoriya stood up for himself, and his face morphed into anger. He grabbed Midoriya by the arm and jerked him forward. Hey, you better watch your mouth before I break it, he snarled. Midoriya glared at him. Uji, let go of me right now. If you don't, then I'll consider this assault, and I'll be forced to react accordingly. Uji outright laughed. Oh, that's rich. Like a little quirkless loser like you could do anything to me. I don't care if you somehow manage to get into UA, you're still a pathetic little weakling. Hey! Uji turned at the new voice, and then screamed when he was suddenly headbutted in the face by Kirishima, fully hardened. Uji fell to the ground, allowing Midoriya to step back by Kirishima's side. The redhead was glaring at Uji, who was clutching his nose. Don't even think about touching him, creep, you hear me? Kirishima cried. You fucker. Uji shot up and ran off, disappearing out the doors to the arcade. Good riddance. Kirishima shouted after him. Then he paled, seemingly realized what he just did, and he glanced at Midoriya sheepishly. Sorry Izuku. That was super unmanly of me. But I saw him grabbing you and I just lost it. I'm so sorry. That's okay, Midoriya replied, smiling. I was gonna take care of it if he didn't let go, but, I won't lie, watching you headbutt him felt good. Kirishima rubbed his neck and laughed nervously. Let's go sit down and eat and hope I don't get kicked out, okay? By the time they had ordered food, nachos for Kirishima and a corn dog for Midoriya, and sat down, Kirishima had gone into a full-on rant about Uji and bullies in general. Midoriya kind of wanted to tell him to let it go, but he also felt his heart fluttering to hear the other boy sound so incensed on his behalf. It's still sometimes weird to have so many friends who care about me, but it also feels really good. And why did he think you were still quirkless? Kirishima demanded, chewing his food as he spoke. I mean, I know you weren't born with a quirk, but come on. Has he seriously never watched the news? Everyone knows you have a badass quirk now. You literally helped save the world. Midoriya shrugged. Who knows? To be honest, I don't think he ever even thought of me until today, and then it was like we never left middle school. I wasn't a person to him, after all. Kirishima looked sad. I really wish I knew you in middle school. I hate thinking about past you getting treated so badly. Midoriya smiled at him. At least I have you now. Kirishima blushed and took another bite of his nachos. Once he swallowed, he spoke again. You know, you're a big reason for why I decided to apply to UA. Midoriya raised his eyebrow in confusion. What? What do you mean? I thought you said that Crimson Riot inspired you to be a hero. Yeah, Crimson Riot made me want to be a hero, but, wow, I can't believe I never told you this. Kirishima looked down at his food as he talked. I wanted to become a hero, yeah, but I still had a lot of doubts about myself in middle school. I got bullied too, and I always was scared I would never be enough of a man to do it. But then I saw you save Katsuki from that sludge villain all those years ago on the news. You did? Midoriya asked, shocked. Yeah. Watching you, a kid like me, throw himself into danger just to save someone's life, it really helped me believe in myself, you know? I thought if he could do it, then so could I. Kirishima looked back up at Midoriya, and the green-haired boy was shocked at the emotion in his eyes. You inspire me to be a better hero every day, Izuku, and I can't thank you enough for it. Midoriya felt himself start to tear up. I drew. Kirishima sniffled and rubbed his own eyes, then gave him a watery smile. Ah, look what I did. It's no fun to cry into our food. Come on, let's finish eating and go keep playing. Midoriya laughed and took a bite of his corn dog. Got it, Eiji? You know, it's super unmanly to talk with your mouth full, Midobro. Midoriya threw the corn dog at his face. Alright, well we played a lot of games during our contest dash. Our incredibly one-sided contest, Midoriya pointed out smugly. Yeah, yuck it up. Kirishima laughed. But seriously, what do you want to play now? Ooh. Midoriya pointed forward. It was one of those rhythm dancing games. Let's do that one. And let's actually just play it and have fun this time, no competition. Sure, Kirishima agreed. They entered their last tokens into the machine, then took their positions on the metallic dance pads. You ready? Midoriya asked, almost hopping in his excitement. You know it, man. The song began, and the two boys started trying to match their feet on the arrows on the pad to the ones on the screen. To their own surprise, they quickly fell into synchronization. Dude! Kirishima cheered. I think we might get the high score. Keep going, Aijiro. We can do this. Midoriya cheered back. Hell yeah, crap. Kirishima mistimed his jump, and he ended up tripping over his own feet. Midoriya yelped as the other boy crashed into him, sending both of them off of the dance pads and onto the floor. Game over, the robotic voice yelled from the machine. Kirishima lifted his head up, groaning dizzily. Oops. Sorry, Midobro dash. Kirishima gasped when he realized where he had landed. Midoriya was lying underneath him, blushing fiercely. Kirishima flailed, trying to get a grip on the ground so he could push himself up. Oh crap. Sorry man, that was uncool of me. Here, let me get up dash. Midoriya grabbed Kirishima by the shirt and pulled him back down, kissing him deeply. Kirishima's eyes widened in surprise, and after a moment Midoriya broke the kiss, panting slightly as he looked up at him. Sorry if that surprised you. It just felt right, Midoriya said quietly. Kirishima slowly smiled down at him. Yeah, it did, he said, before leaning down to kiss the green-haired boy again. Midoriya happily returned it, wrapping his arms around Kirishima as they continued to embrace. On the dirty floor of a crowded arcade, but who cares about that, right? The owner did. But he did let Midoriya exchange his tickets for a gigantic stuffed All Might before kicking them out, so that was nice of him. Ojiro spent his morning relaxing in his bed, lazily scrolling through his phone, laughing at memes and rewatching some of his favorite fight scenes from movies. While several of his classmates had been at least a little anxious about their dates, Ojiro found that he didn't really feel the same panic or nerves. He supposed that was probably because he was going on a date with Hagakure. Ever since their first week at UA, Hagakure was probably the person Ojiro had become closest to. She was his best friend. So honestly, the idea of going on a date with her wasn't very scary to him. And speak of the devil. He saw a message just came from her, so Ojiro opened the chat app to see it. Now you don't, Morning Mashi. Ojiro smiled at the nickname. The first time she called him that, he had to hide under his tail to keep her from seeing his blush. Sandy cheeks, good morning Toru. Now you don't, look outside your bedroom door. Ojiro furrowed his eyebrows. Huh, that's interesting. He got up from his bed and walked to his door, only to open it and see nothing. Toru, are you naked? He asked the hallway, just to make sure. While no verbal answer came, he did get another ping on his phone. Now you don't, look down silly. Ojiro glanced at his feet and noticed a piece of paper. He picked it up and realized there was an address printed on it. Huh, is there where she wants to take me on our date? Sandy cheeks, what exactly is this? Hagakure didn't answer him. Instead, she sent this. Now you don't, see you there, winky face. Ojiro couldn't help but laugh, going back into his room. Well, I guess I should get ready. I have a date with Turuet, who knows the hell where. Well, wherever it is, I can at least guess it won't be boring. Ojiro paid his taxi and stepped out onto the street. Glancing around, he saw no sign of his invisible date. He looked up to the building he had been dropped off at, which appeared to be a store. Welcome to Hidden Treasures. I hope this isn't a sex store, he muttered. Mashi, there you are. Ojiro staggered as a weight suddenly leapt onto his back and hands wrapped around his neck, hands he couldn't actually see. Looking over his shoulder at nothing, he smiled. Hey Tur, I hope I didn't keep you waiting long. Nope, you're right on time, she said, jumping off of him. She was wearing a pink t-shirt and white jeans with pink sandals, an outfit Ojiro found very cute. So, guess what we're doing? Well, we're at a store, so I guess we're going shopping? Ojiro ventured, scratching his head. Oh, Mashireo, we're not just going shopping, Hagakure said, walking in front of him and excitedly pointing her sleeve at the store. We are going thrift shopping. What's the difference? Hagakure huffed and stamped her feet. What's the Mashi? I have dragged you to enough stores that you should know the difference. Thrift shopping is so much cooler than normal shopping because everything in thrift stores is super weird. And that's why, Hagakure's voice turned playful. I thought we could have a little competition. Oh? Ojiro asked. Do tell. Okay. Hagakure excitedly grabbed his hand and pulled him into the store, where Ojiro was stunned to see what seemed like an endless sea of clothes. So, my first date idea was to take you to that fancy cafe with the strawberry cake you like. But then I realized that this thrift store was nearby, and I had an amazing idea. Basically, we're going to each get 30 minutes to find clothes to make the craziest outfit you can think of. Winner is whoever has the best outfit. And then, to make things even more funny, we can wear the outfits to the cafe and freak everyone out. Well, what does the winner get? Ojiro asked, intrigued. This sounded like a lot of fun. Hagakure paused and hummed. Well, I didn't think that far. How about, Ojiro thought for a moment. Winner gets to pick what the loser eats at the cafe. Hagakure gasped. Oh, that's evil. You are so on. Well, then what are you waiting for? Ojiro smiled at her before suddenly running past her, causing Hagakure to jump back in surprise. 30 minutes on the clock. Turu. He smirked at her over his shoulder before turning into an aisle and vanishing. Oh no fair, I wasn't ready. Hagakure screamed, chasing after him. Ooh, but this would really bring out my eyes. Hagakure exclaimed, picking up a green halter-cut sweater. Dropping it back onto the pile, she grabbed a t-shirt depicting an artistic interpretation of Kamui Woods and Ami lady kissing. But this is really cute and I totally ship it. Throwing that shirt over her shoulder, Hagakure picked up a dress that was completely black except for a picture of a swollen, bleeding eyeball in the middle. But if I get this, I'll be able to match it with that black nail polish Fumikage gave me for Christmas. She screamed, throwing the dress onto the ground. Why is shopping for cute clothes so damn hard? Ooh. Immediately changing her tune, she picked up a shirt made of plastic. This is nice, and I feel like it fits me really well. Oh wow, they have a section of pants for people with tails, Ojiro commented. That's surprisingly forward-thinking of them. Ojiro picked up a pair of blue booty shorts with a hole cut in the back and frowned. I mean, at that point, why bother wearing pants at all? He turned to a rack of shirts and looked through it, pulling out a Hawaiian shirt covered in bananas. Okay, that's too obvious, let's find something else. Shifting through a few more, he pulled out another shirt and tilted his head in confusion. I didn't even know they made Shigaraki merchandise. Does he even get paid for that? I mean, I know he's a villain, but that seems weird to not make any money off your own image. Shaking his head, he put the shirt back and turned to another display, and immediately blushed. Okay, that has to be illegal somehow. Who wants to wear a shirt with naked people on it? Hagakure gasped in joy when she saw a galaxy hat. Perfect, she cried, running over and grabbing it. However, she was surprised when another hand grabbed it at the exact moment her own did. She looked up to see Ojiro standing in front of her, also looking surprised. They stared each other down. We may be on a date, Mashireo, Hagakure said, her voice calm. But you should know I am prepared to fight you to the death for this hat. Good, because you're only getting this hat if you pry it from my cold dead hands, Ojiro replied, voice also calm. Can I please have the hat, Moshi? Sure. Thanks. Hagakure snatched the hat and kissed Ojiro on the cheek before running off. Ojiro touched his cheek in surprise, before a huge grin split his face, and he took off running too. Without that hat, he had to find something else to complete his look. Time's up. Hagakure and Ojiro met back up at the store's changing rooms, their arms full of clothes. Ojiro pouted when he saw Hagakure was already wearing the galaxy hat, and she just giggled at the sight. Okay, let's get dressed, she said. The two entered the rooms, and after about 15 minutes, both were dressed and ready. Okay, Moshi, on the count of 3. Hagakure called from behind her door. Okay. Ojiro agreed from behind his. 3. They stepped out, looked at each other, and both burst out laughing. Hagakure was wearing a nice-looking orange polka-dotted dress, but it was kind of ruined by the cheetah print leggings she wore underneath, the galaxy hat, and the piece de resistance. One of the biggest, fluffiest-looking fur coats anyone had ever seen. It was so big that Hagakure's tiny body was basically drowning in it. Ojiro, meanwhile, was wearing a nice-looking tan suit jacket and a dark brown dress shirt. If he wore it to a party, he might be presentable, as long as you ignore the vest which was patterned with the faces of cats. Or his neon pink jeans. Oh my gosh. Hagakure giggled helplessly. How did you find pink jeans? Holy crap, somewhere best jeanist is sobbing. What about you? Ojiro was clutching his stomach from laughing so hard. That fur coat is massive. Isn't it heavy? Kind of. Hagakure admitted. Okay, I think the winner is obvious, Ojiro said, gesturing to her entire outfit. Yep. And it's you. Hagakure cried, jumping forward and giving him a hug. Ojiro hugged her back, but he had a look of shock on his face. Wait, how am I the winner? Your outfit is insane, he asked. The galaxy hat tilted back as Hagakure looked up at him. Yeah, but you look super cute, so I'm deciding you're the winner, she said mischievously. Wink. Ojiro immediately turned bright red, and Hagakure started laughing again. Hello, welcome to Rose's Cafe, how can I? The waitress slowly trailed off as she looked up from her pad and saw the customers sitting before her. Sitting at a table, fur coats and pink jeans and galaxy hats on display, Ojiro and Hagakure grinned at her innocently. Hi, the invisible girl greeted. I'd like to start with a raspberry smoothie, please. And I'll take a glass of lemon water, the tailed boy added. I'll be right back with that, the waitress said, writing down their orders and turning around. The fuck? The two teens burst into quiet giggles. Did you see the look on her face? Hagakure asked. Oh, this was so worth it. Yeah, it was, Ojiro agreed. They spent a few minutes chatting about how they picked their outfits before the waitress returned with their drinks. Taking a sip, Ojiro looked around and was amused to see the entire cafe openly staring at them. And for once it's not because of a tail or being invisible. This was so much fun. True came up with such a good idea. Looking at the invisible girl in question, Ojiro thought about the past 2 years he had known her. He always had so much fun whenever he spent time with her. How come we're only doing this now? He couldn't help but ask. What do you mean? Hagakure asked. I mean, Ojiro tried to put his thoughts into words. We became close right away when he joined UA. We hung out so much, and you always make me laugh, and I've never done anything with you and not ended up happier for it. I think you're absolutely amazing too. Ah, Mashireo, Hagakure squeaked, hiding her unseen face behind the sleeves of her coat. Stop it, you're making me blush. I'm pretty sure I've been in love with you since you comforted me after the first sports festival. Hagakure froze, and she looked at Ojiro in amazement. I in love? She repeated. Do you really mean that, Mashireo? Ojiro gulped nervously, but nodded. Why, I did. I love you too. I love you a lot. Hagakure let out a happy noise, then leaned over the table to kiss him. Ojiro returned it eagerly, and when they broke it he thought he could almost see the giant smile in Hagakure's voice. Oh, Mashireo, I love you too. I can't even remember when I started loving you. I've loved you that long. Hagakure paused again. Oh wait, I love you. Why haven't we been dating this entire time? Ojiro laughed. That's what I was just wondering. Hagakure stayed quiet for a moment, thinking it over. Well, maybe we weren't supposed to until now? I mean, maybe if we had admitted how we felt to each other earlier, then maybe we wouldn't have fallen in love with the others too. You might be right, Ojiro said. And I want to be with you, Hagakure assured him. But I want to be with them too. So do I, Ojiro said softly. Hagakure reached over and grabbed his hand. So maybe waiting for you is worth it, if it means we get them and each other too. Ojiro smiled at her and lifted her hand to press a kiss to it. Yeah, I think it was Toru. Even though Hagakure was invisible, Ojiro somehow always knew exactly where she was. Just another reason she loved him. I wish I had more strawberry cake, Ojiro whined, patting his satisfied stomach. They had just gotten off the train and were returning to campus. Hagakure walked with her arms hooked around Ojiro's and was resting her head on his shoulder. It was so good. Hagakure giggled. Don't worry, I'll make you a homemade one, she said. And it will taste even better because it was made with love. Ojiro looked down at her and kissed her. Maybe we should cool down on this I love yous for a bit. Don't want to scare the others. Maybe you have a point, Hagakure said. Besides, I'm pretty sure our outfits are going to scare them enough. She did a little twirl as she spoke, her coat flowing around her, and Ojiro smiled at the sight. She noticed him smiling and tilted her head. What? Nothing, Ojiro replied. You're just really cute. Ah, thank you, she kissed him again. And just so you know, pink is such a good color on you. You think so? Ojiro asked, looking down at his pants. I'm not sure. Hey, do you think if I actually send a picture of these to Best Jeanist, he'll have an aneurysm? Well, I think we need to find out right now, don't we? Shiro was sitting on the couch in the common room, enjoying a bowl of miso soup for breakfast, when Todoroki entered the room, walked up to the couch, and stared at Shiro without saying a word. Shiro looked up at him and smiled. Good morning, he greeted cheerfully. Todoroki continued staring at him for another few moments, before turning around and walking right back out of the room, still silent. Shiro just chuckled and went back to his food. Do I love me some miso in the morning? About a minute later, Todoroki returned to the common room, this time sitting down on the couch next to Shiro. Get your nerves out? Shiro asked, taking another bite. Yes, Todoroki replied. I believe I am now ready to ask you on a date. Awesome. Shiro set his bowl on the table, then pulled his legs up underneath him and turned to Todoroki with an excited grin. Hit me. Todoroki dubiously raised an eyebrow, before lifting his fist and aiming it at Shiro's face. The black-haired boy giggled and pushed his hand back down. That's not what I meant, and you know it should-o. Come on, what's your plan for our date? Well, Todoroki started. To be honest, I've never even thought about actually going on a date before all this happened. So I decided to ask my brother Natsuo for advice. Oh? Shiro asked, curious and a little apprehensive. And what did he say? Shiro had heard enough about Natsuo to know that, while the college student did love his little brother, he also had a tendency to mess with him by taking advantage of Todoroki's unique brand of social awkwardness. He suggested I just keep things simple and take you to see a movie, Todoroki answered. Inwardly, Shiro let out a sigh of relief. Phew, that sounded like a normal date idea. He smiled at Todoroki. That sounds awesome. Todoroki smiled back, also looking relieved, and Shiro thought his heart was about to explode from the sight. This boy is too damn beautiful. It's not even fair. I'm glad you think so too, Todoroki said. So what now? Shiro laughed and picked up his miso soup. Well, how about we meet up tonight, say around 7. That way we can get to the movies by 8? Okay, Todoroki nodded, standing up. I will see you at 7. Todoroki paused. Then, to Shiro's shock and delight, he leaned down and pressed a quick kiss to the other boy's cheek. Shiro watched as Todoroki stood back up, face now as red as half of his hair, before he spun around and speed-walked out of the common room. Shiro thinks he might have dropped his soup, but he was too busy trying to figure out if had died and gone to heaven or not to care. Later that night, Shiro was sitting on his bed, tying on his shoes. He stood up and looked at himself in the mirror and grinned. He had decided to wear a gray t-shirt, an orange jacket, and his favorite pair of jeans. "Damn," he said, flexing and striking a pose. "I am one sexy tape dispenser." He heard a knock at his door and winked at his reflection. "Showtime." Opening the door, he smiled at Todoroki. The other boy was wearing a light blue sweater and jeans, and had even combed his hair into a nice style. Once again, Shiro couldn't believe he was actually going on a date with the stoic heartthrob of Class 3A. "Man, I'm surprised you made it," Shiro said jokingly. "With what a long walk it was." Todoroki glanced at the door to his own room, right next door to Shiro's, and hummed. "It was a very long walk, my feet are about to fall off." "So, are you ready?" "Hell yeah." Shiro stuck his head back into his room to give his mirror one more quick wink, then shut the door and turned back to Todoroki with a smile. "Let's go." And so I finally said to him, "Fine, you can keep the clown costume, but the gorilla suit has to go, or we're done here." Shiro finished his story as the two boys walked up to the movie theater. Todoroki titled his head. "But what did you do with all of that yogurt?" "Well, luckily we had crash-landed next to a retirement home, so we just donated it to them for their disco party," Shiro shrugged. "You have had an interesting life, Hanta." As they approached the ticket counter, Shiro looked up at the marquee to see what movies were playing, and gasped. He couldn't believe he had forgotten, but the live-action Shameless Phantom movie had finally come out. The Shameless Phantom was the latest manga he and Todoroki had become obsessed with over the past several months, and they spent a lot of time discussing the new plot developments and twists with each new chapter released. Well, he knew what movie they were going to see tonight. "Sweet. Hello. I need 2 tickets for the 8:30 showing of My Precious Someone, please," Todoroki said to the ticket seller. "Or not." Todoroki paid for their tickets, but when he turned around and saw Shiro's look of confusion, he became worried. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," Shiro said quickly, putting a smile on his face. "So, what made you pick that movie?" Todoroki visibly relaxed. "Natsuo said the best movie for a first date was a romantic comedy, I think," he replied. "Based on my research on which films would be shown here, this was both the most romantic and the most comedic of them, so I decided it was perfect for our date." "Oh god damn it, Natsuo, depriving me of Shameless Phantoms." As it turned out, Shiro was not the biggest fan of romantic comedies. But he didn't want to make Todoroki feel insecure about his choice, so he instantly resolved to just grin and bear it. After all, even if the movie was bad, at least he was still with Todoroki. "Cool," Shiro said. The two began walking into the building. "This is going to be great. Please let it be at least kind of good," he thought desperately. "Are you sure you didn't want any snacks?" Shiro asked as they sat down in their seats. Todoroki shook his head. "No, I ate before we came here," he said. Shiro shrugged and shoved a handful of popcorn into his mouth. "Not really the point of a movie snack, so your loss I guess," he said with a cheerful grin. Todoroki found himself watching Shiro enjoy his popcorn. One thing he had always admired about Shiro was how easy happiness seemed to come to him. Even something as small as eating snacks at a movie theater was enough to keep that ever-present grin on his face. Todoroki wished he could be more like that sometimes. Shiro noticed him watching him and tilted his head. "What? Do I have something on my face?" Todoroki blushed and looked away. "Nothing," he said quickly. Shiro chuckled. "You're so cute. Don't set on fire, don't set on fire, don't set on fire, do not set on fire." The lights dimmed, and the two boys fell silent as the movie began to play. As soft rock music filled the theater and a shot of a city came on the screen, Todoroki suddenly had a thought. I never checked the reviews. Maybe I should have done that." And as it turns out, Todoroki was completely right. The main character of the film was a young woman named Araki, a college student living alone in a small apartment. Her voice narrated how the film was the story of how she fell in love with her precious someone. "Ooh, they said the title," Shiro whispered, giggling. "Oh, is it funny when movies do that?" Todoroki thought. "Should I laugh too? It's probably too late to laugh, but should I laugh anyway?" "Haha," he said. Shiro gave him a funny look, but then laughed and laid his head on his shoulder before returning his attention to the screen. It took all of Todoroki's self-control not to burst into flames on the spot. Keep calm, Shudo. Act like you're a normal human being and respond. Todoroki slowly lifted his arm and rested it on the chair behind Shiro. Then even slower, he lowered it until it rested along the black-haired boy's shoulders. Nailed it. The two continued watching the movie, but Todoroki soon found himself wrinkling his eyebrows in confusion. Araki had met a fellow college student named Wanijima, and they were going on dates. Except Wanijima was, to be frank, a dick. I'm having trouble understanding this, Todoroki whispered to Shiro. Why does she like him? So unlikable. Lots of guys in romantic comedies are unlikable, Shiro whispered back. It's a bit of an issue. As the movie went on, Todoroki soon decided Shiro was right. Wanijima was insufferable. He constantly acted like he was better than Araki, even though he was obviously an idiot, and he kept doing strange things that ruined all of their dates, and yet Araki acted like he was Prince Charming himself. Todoroki was very quickly regretting his choice of movie. That is the last time I listened to Natsuo. Aren't romantic comedies supposed to be funny? Todoroki blurted out after an extremely uncomfortable scene in which Wanijima accidentally knocked Araki off a bridge. I'm sure someone thought this was funny, Shiro said. Not anyone sane, I'm sure. How has Hanta not walked out on me yet? Todoroki thought. I would have if someone was subjecting me to something this bad. Finally, there was a slightly sweet scene where Araki told Wanijima about her dreams of becoming a scientist. As bad as the film was, the woman playing Araki was at least a good actress, and Todoroki tried to summon hope that the movie wouldn't get any worse. But then it did. After another disastrous date, Araki decided it was time to end her relationship with Wanijima and move on. Yes, please, he couldn't help but mutter. I know, right? Shiro whispered to him. However, Wanijima was not happy in the slightest that Araki no longer wanted to be with him, and decided the perfect solution was to trap Araki in her own bedroom and refuse to let her leave until she agreed to continue dating him. Todoroki was frozen in his seat. He was clenching the armrests of his seat so hard, he thought he might crack them. Who the hell thought this was okay? He said, voice chillingly cold. Shudo? Shiro asked. This isn't comedic. This isn't romantic. Who the hell wrote this movie? They should never have been allowed to hold a pen. Hey, Shudo, calm down, you're starting to yell, Shiro said, looking around nervously. I can't fucking believe Todoroki was seething, and his breathing began to increase rapidly. This isn't funny. Shudo, please. Todoroki felt arms wrap around him and pull him close. He looked and saw Shiro giving him a look of concern. Todoroki tried to speak, only to find that his voice was lost. Instead, he turned his face into Shiro's shoulder and tried to breathe, all while Shiro rubbed his back and whispered softly to him. It's okay, Shudo, he was saying. I know what's wrong, but it's okay. It's just a movie, and you're here, and I'm here. It's okay. Hanta, I want to leave, Todoroki said quietly. I don't want to watch this anymore. Okay, Shiro agreed instantly. He slowly stood up, helping Todoroki to his feet, and began to gently pull him along the aisle. In that moment, Todoroki couldn't have been more grateful. He gave the screen one last hateful look. Fuck you, Wanijima. Shiro gave Todoroki a worried glance as they walked out of the theater. Seeing a bench nearby, Shiro guided him over to it and sat down, keeping his arms wrapped around Todoroki's shoulders. The dual-haired boy sat next to him, staring down at the ground. You're breathing better, I'm glad, Shiro started. Are you feeling any better? Not really, Todoroki admitted. I'm sorry I freaked out like that, that stupid movie, it reminded me of I know, Shiro stopped him. It's okay, Shudo, you don't have to say it, I know. Todoroki didn't answer, but he did lean closer to him. Shiro sighed and tightened his hold around Todoroki. Well, this date kind of went off the rails, didn't it? He joked, trying to lighten the mood. To his happiness, that made Todoroki snort. Yeah, he said softly. How do you do it? Do what? Shiro asked. How are you just? Todoroki looked up and met Shiro's eyes. Happy? No matter what happens, you always smile, you're always ready with a joke to help people feel better. I've always been curious, how do you do it? I mean, Shiro thought about it. I'm not happy all the time. No one is, but I guess, for me, I just always kind of believe that, no matter what happens, things will get better. So, yeah, you have to deal with the shitty things sometimes, but it's easier for me to look forward to the better, and then I try to bring a little of that better to now. Shiro shrugged. I'm not sure if that makes any sense, but that's how I see it. That makes plenty of sense to me, Todoroki said. He sighed and leaned back. I wish I had picked Shameless Phantom like I wanted, but no, I had to listen to Natsuo. I don't know why I ever listened to him, it never works out for me. You know, Shiro said, eyes brightening. It's not too late to see it. He stood up and offered Todoroki his hand. Come on. I'll pay this time. Let's go enjoy some phantom shenanigans, he cheered, raising his fist in excitement. Todoroki looked at him for a moment, and then laughed softly and took his hand, allowing him to pull him up. That sounds like a much better night, Todoroki said. He paused, and then leaned forward and gave Shiro a short kiss on the lips. Thank you, Hanta, he whispered. I don't think I've ever told you how much you mean to me. Shiro grinned, and kissed him again. Feel free to tell me as much as you want, he said. With that, the two boys walked hand in hand back to the theater, this time ready to enjoy some quality cinema. The next morning, an anonymous review of My Precious Someone went viral online for its sheer viciousness and unabashed hatred of the movie. It was so unrelenting in its criticism of the film's glamorization of an abusive relationship that people started jumping on the bandwagon and demanding the film be banned from Japanese cinemas. Shiro was quite proud of Todoroki for that, he wouldn't lie. Ashido was dancing around her bedroom, her latest favorite song blasting on her radio speakers while she sang into her hairbrush. Melting. Are you the one I've waited for? Melting. No, I don't want to wait no more, she sung/yelled, dropping to her knees and throwing her head back like a rock star. She barely heard a knock at her door over the sound of the music. Mina? A voice called. Shooting to her feet, Ashido threw her hairbrush onto her bed and quickly shut off the radio, before rushing to her door and throwing it open. Azui was standing on the other side, looking at her in amusement. Well, you certainly seem to be in a good mood, she commented. Ashido grinned at her. Well, how can I not be, when I'm going on a date with the cutest frog in Mizutafu? She said, winking. Azui smiled at the compliment. That's sweet of you. Speaking of which, I thought it would be nice if we cooked dinner together tonight for our date. I was thinking gyoza and ramen, and then we could do something special for the dessert afterwards. Ashido gasped and jumped up and down excitedly, clapping her hands. That sounds awesome. Ooh, Sue, that's such a romantic idea. I love it. She stopped and then laughed, rubbing her head. I should probably warn you that I'm not the best cook, she admitted. I know, Azui replied. I don't think any of us have forgotten the pancake incident. Okay, in my defense, Rikido definitely put the salt in the wrong place. It's not my fault I mistook it for the sugar. But was it his fault when you got distracted and left the pancakes on the stove? Azui asked, raising an eyebrow. Ashido giggled sheepishly. Okay, you got me there. Man, scrubbing all the burn marks off the ceiling had not been fun. Azui shook her head and smiled. Don't worry about it, Mina. I'll be there to help you. I used to cook for my siblings all the time. I'm going to go out and buy the things we need. Let's meet in the kitchen at around 5 o'clock. Sounds great, Ashido said, jumping and pulling Azui into a hug, before going back into her room. I'll see you then. Azui nodded and turned to walk off. Ashido shut her door, then started to squeal in excitement. She slammed her hand back on her radio, and started to dance even harder in her joy. I'm melting. I'm melting just to be with you. Azui hummed softly to herself as she appraised some green onions. Deciding they looked good, she placed them in her handbasket and moved on to the next item on her list. She was at the grocery store a few blocks from school, where all of her classmates went whenever the dorms needed some food. Azui was familiar with where everything was, so hopefully getting everything wouldn't take long. She stopped when she passed the baking aisle. Maybe Mina would want dessert? Azui pondered to herself. Cheesecake might be a nice complement to dinner. The only problem was that Azui had never actually made cheesecake before, but after another moment of contemplation, she made her way down the aisle and started gathering supplies. I've learned how to make a lot of things over the years. How hard can it be? Setting all her groceries on the kitchen counter, Azui pulled out her phone and sent a message to Ishido. Froppy, hey, I'm back and in the kitchen. Confident bitch, sweet. Be right down. Azui nodded and pocketed her phone, then got to work pulling everything out of the bags, and then grabbing all the utensils they would need for cooking. After a few minutes, she heard someone run into the kitchen, and then arms wrapped around her stomach and a chin propped itself on her shoulder. Oh wow. Ishido looked over all the food with gleaming eyes. You sure we can't just eat all this stuff as it is? Because I'm really hungry. Be patient, Azui replied, tapping Ishido on the nose and making the other girl giggle. Unless you really want to eat raw noodles, but I've been told that's not a pleasant experience. Ooh, that sounds like an interesting story, Ishido said, letting go of Azui to move next to her. Not really, Azui shrugged, grabbing a knife and getting to work on chopping up all the vegetables. Just my little sister being a dummy? Oh, Satsuki? Ishido asked. Looking at what she could do without making a huge mess of things, she decided to get started on the eggs. She broke a few of them into a bowl, then began to furiously mix them with chopsticks. You said you used to cook for them a lot, right? Yeah, Azui replied. Because our parents were gone on business trips so much, I ended up having to take care of them most of the time. Ah, that's not fair, Ishido said, frowning. Leaving you guys alone and forcing you to do all the work? No, it was okay, Azui assured her. I love Satsuki and Samidare, and I love taking care of them. The frog girl smiled over at Mina. Besides, staying here in the dorms is kind of like being a big sister 24/7. Considering how much trouble you all seem to get in on a daily basis. Okay, don't even pretend you're not just as much of a chaotic gremlin as the rest of us. I seem to recall a certain giant water balloon to drop on Class 2B to be your idea, after all. I can neither confirm or deny, Azui said, chuckling when Ishido began to pout. I think we can get started on boiling the noodles. Can you turn the stove on? All right. Ishido grinned maniacally. Let's do this. She grabbed the knob on the stove and cranked it hard to the right. The stove immediately burst into flames. Oh God, Sue, help me, what do I do? Azui calmly reached over and turned the stove off. Not that hot, Mina. Whoops. I'll just be over here. With the chicken, Ishido slowly slunk away from the stove. That's probably for the best, Azui admitted. Luckily, there weren't any more mistakes like that during the rest of their cooking adventure together. Ishido did need some help every now and then, but Azui's calm instruction and support helped the pink-skinned girl gain a lot of confidence, and she was able to work through the recipes without any big trouble. Ooh, Ishido was saying when Azui revealed what kind of ramen they were making. Egg drop ramen? I've never even thought of trying that before, but it sounds delicious. It is really good, Azui said, pouring some of their mixed eggs into the pot, then stirring it with the noodles. Me and my siblings were just experimenting with different ideas one night, and we came up with this. It's even better if you add some chicken to it. Oh God, stop, Ishido begged, mouth-watering. I'm about to stick my entire face into that pot. Stop making it sound so good. She looked down at the gyoza she was attempting to roll and frowned. Hey, how come when I try to close the wrap, it doesn't stay together, but yours looks so good? You have to do it like this. Azui stepped behind her and took her hands in her own, and slowly worked through folding the gyoza. You have to pinch it harder to make sure it stays together. She looked up at Ishido's face, and laughed when she saw it had turned completely red. You good, Mina-chan? Yep. Ishido smiled. Just, you're really close and really pretty. Don't mind me, just some minor gay panic, I'm fine. Azui stepped away and returned her attention to the stove. Okay, chicken is ready. After another hour of cooking and chatting, both the gyoza and ramen were ready. Ishido clapped her hands together and cooed at the completed dishes. Wow. I can't believe we made this together. I bet it's gonna be so damn good. Azui nodded. Let's eat now, and then we can tackle the cheesecake afterwards. The two girls quickly loaded the gyoza onto a plate and the ramen into bowls, then walked over to the kitchen table and sat down next to each other. Ashido looked at Azui with a grin and clasped her hands together, bowing as much as she could in her chair. Itadakimasu, Tsuchan. Azui smiled and bowed back. Itadakimasu, Mina-chan. Now let's dig in. Ashido shouted, grabbing her chopsticks and stuffing one of the gyoza into her mouth. Instantly, her eyes became teary and she moaned. Ooh yeah, that's the good shit right here. Azui picked up her own chopsticks and tried a piece of gyoza herself. It is really good. You know, if becoming heroes doesn't work out, we should open our own restaurant. Ashido said excitedly. We can call it Poison Dart Frog Fine Dining. I don't think a name like that would get us a lot of business, Azui pointed out. Ashido waved a hand dismissively. Only to people who don't like to live life to the fullest. Only true badasses would be brave enough to eat at Poison Dart Frog Fine Dining. And that is the only kind of business I would accept. You are a true business visionary, Mina. Thank you. Azui smiled and continued eating, listening to Ashido continue to plan out the non-existent restaurant. She had to repeatedly remind Ashido to pause her talking long enough to eat, but truthfully she was enjoying listening to her. Seeing the way Ashido's face lit up when she was so enthusiastic about one of her crazy ideas was a truly beautiful sight. Tsu, can I ask you something? Azui blinked, getting pulled out of her thoughts by Ashido's voice. She frowned when she realized the other girl's face was melancholy, stirring her ramen with her chopsticks listlessly. What's wrong, Mina? Tonight was really nice, Ashido started after a moment. Like really nice. I want to keep having nights like this with you, Tsu, like as girlfriend and girlfriend. I want that too, Mina, Azui said. Were you worried I wouldn't? Not really, Ashido looked down at the table. I mean maybe a little. Why? Azui racked her brain, trying to think if she had done or said anything to make Ashido doubt her own feelings. I've always wanted to be with you, Mina. Really? Ashido looked up in surprise. Of course, Azui said, sounding shocked that Ashido would be surprised by that. You're such a strong and kind person, and you're gorgeous, and you always try your best, no matter what obstacle is in front of you. You're going to be an amazing hero, and you've been an amazing friend. Azui reached over and gently took her hand. How can I not be in love with someone like you, Mina? Ashido started to tear up again. No one's ever told me they were in love with me before. Well, now you have, Azui said, wiping her tears. And you're going to hear it about 18 more times, because believe me, there is not a single person in our class who doesn't love you to the moon and back. Ashido started to laugh happily. Well, now I feel silly for ever worrying. It's okay, Azui reassured her. Everyone has doubts sometimes. But don't have any doubts about this, Mina. This is going to work, all of us. I'll try to, Ashido promised, smiling widely. Good. Now, let's finish eating, Azui suggested, picking up another piece of gyoza. And then we can get started on the cheesecake. Ooh, I almost forgot about that. Ashido said. I bet it's gonna be delicious once it's done. Beep 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 beep. Oh crap. Quick, get the fire extinguisher. Where the hell is it? Under the goddamn sink, Mina. Found it. Hush. Once the flames had disappeared under the stream of white foam, Ashido and Azui stared at the blackened pan of what should have been a fluffy cheesecake sitting in the oven in shock. Okay, Azui said after a moment. Cheesecake turned out to be harder to make than I thought. I thought you'd made it before? Ashido asked. No, the frog girl confessed. I just thought cheesecake was a romantic dessert, and I kind of thought, well, how difficult can it be? The girls continued looking at the oven, and then looked at each other. Ashido broke first, snorting and holding her mouth as she started to giggle uncontrollably. Azui followed soon after, laughing softly. Geez, Tsu, if you wanted to take my title of worst chef in class, you could have just asked. Ashido said jokingly. No need to burn the kitchen down. Azui hummed thoughtfully and tapped her cheek. Well, I don't see any other witnesses, do you? Ashido gasped and pointed at Azui in disbelief. Ah, no way. I'm gonna tell everyone. And who exactly do you think would believe you, Mina? Tsu. Letting out a growl, Ashido pulled the other girl into her arms and kissed her hard. Azui happily returned the kiss, ignoring the ruined cake in the oven in favor of the gorgeous pink-skinned girl before her. You know, Ashido said in a flirtatious tone once the kiss broke. Cake is an okay dessert, but I think I prefer the taste of frog to end my evening. Yeah, that didn't really sound as good as it did in my head. Says you, that was the most romantic thing I've ever heard. Now kiss me again, alien queen. Yes, ma'am. Yaoyorozu had felt pretty confident about her and Tokoyami's date, up until she was standing outside his door. Then she suddenly felt extremely nervous, and all because of one thing that had been plaguing her mind since the previous evening. Can Fumikage kiss people with his beak? Shaking herself out of her thoughts, she knocked on the door. It opened, revealing Tokoyami, with Dark Shadow poking their head out around his neck. The bird-headed boy gave her a bow. Good morning, Momo. Hi, beautiful. Dark Shadow winked at her. Yaoyorozu blushed, and Tokoyami rolled his eyes. Ignore them, they've been insufferable all morning. Well, one of us has to be excited about our date, Fumi. Tokoyami became panicked. I'm excited, he said, looking at Yaoyorozu imploringly. I'm very excited, please don't listen to them. Yaoyorozu giggled. It's okay, Fumikage. And thank you, Dark Shadow. I'm excited to go out with you too. Dark Shadow let out a squeak and vanished into Tokoyami's body. Too pretty, they heard them whisper. Tokoyami's neck flushed red, and he quickly stepped outside his bedroom door. So, he said, trying to act nonchalant. What are we doing for our date? Well, I decided that since both of us love to read, Yaoyorozu explained. Then we could spend the day browsing a bookstore. Tokoyami nodded. That sounds wonderful, Momo. Should I ask him if he can kiss with a beak? Yaoyorozu wondered. Snapping out of it, she smiled at Tokoyami. Great. Shall we go now? Tokoyami followed Yaoyorozu out of the dorms, but became confused when she stopped walking just outside the front gates. Aren't we taking the train into town, Momo? He asked. Yaoyorozu looked at him, seeming startled. Then she turned red. Oh, I suppose that is something we could have done. But I just asked one of my family's drivers, Moari, to come pick us up. The taller girl looked down, embarrassed. If that makes you uncomfortable, Fumikage, I can call him and tell him to not come. Tokoyami chided himself internally. He knew that Yaoyorozu still felt somewhat insecure about supposedly flaunting her wealth in front of her classmates. None of them ever held her social status against her. No, that is fine. Yeah, Dark Shadow added, peeking out of Tokoyami's hood. We've never been in a private car before. This is gonna be fun. Yaoyorozu smiled in relief. If you're sure, then I can't wait for you guys to try the complimentary juice and cheese. Fumikage, you need to marry her right now. Dark Shadow. Juice and cheese, Fumi. Once Tokoyami managed to get Dark Shadow to stop giving Yaoyorozu marriage proposals before the poor girl combusted, the car arrived. After a short drive through the city, they had arrived at a popular bookstore. Thank you, Moari. Yaoyorozu said to the driver, who gave her a thumbs up. I'll let you know when we're ready to get picked up. The car drove off, and the pair entered the bookstore. Dark Shadow immediately came out, looking around the store in wonder. Ooh, look at all the books. Have you been to a bookstore before, Dark Shadow? Yaoyorozu asked as she and Tokoyami began to walk up and down the aisles. Nah, Fumi just orders his books online. So boring, the sentient cork replied. Excuse you, you don't seem to find it boring when I use the internet to order you organic apples, Tokoyami retorted, annoyed with his quirk. I wanna look at the kids' books. Dark Shadow suddenly yelled, and he began to drag Tokoyami away. Dark Shadow, stop. Tokoyami snapped. We are in public. Yaoyorozu walked alongside him, holding her hand to her mouth to cover up her giggles. Tokoyami saw that, and wearily sighed before allowing Dark Shadow to pull him through the store until they reached a very colorful section full of children's literature. Dark Shadow, why must you torment me so? He muttered. Because it's fun. Oh my goodness. Yaoyorozu suddenly cried. She picked a book off of the shelf and eagerly showed it to Tokoyami. Look! Tokoyami read the title, and his eyebrows shot up in surprise. Momo's Adventures? Ooh! Dark Shadow sounded excited. Did you get a book written about you, Momo? Yaoyorozu laughed and started to flip through the pages. No, this is just a book my parents read to me all the time when I was a child. It's about a girl named Momo who travels a kingdom helping others. I always used to pretend the story was about me, and imagine going on those adventures and helping my fellow citizens of the kingdom. Tokoyami felt his heart swell. She's such a pure soul. I don't deserve the chance to have her heart. That's very sweet, Momo. Heh. Yaoyorozu was smiling widely as she looked at a page depicting the other Momo pulling a splinter out of a dragon's foot. I think this book helped inspire me to become a hero. I wanted to be just like this Momo. It has so many good memories. Tokoyami was surprised, however, when she put it back on the shelf. Don't you want to get it? He asked. Yaoyorozu laughed and shook her head. Oh no, of course not. It would be silly to purchase a children's book at my age. Tokoyami frowned. Momo, no one would judge you for wanting to have a piece of your childhood again, he said. Yaoyorozu shrugged and started to walk away. It's fine, Fumikichi. It's not that important, she replied, turning her attention to a shelf full of non-fiction books. Tokoyami felt very sad as he watched Yaoyorozu walk away. She was such a kind-hearted girl. It didn't feel right for her not to get something that clearly brought her joy just because it was a little childish. Looking back at the book, he had a sudden idea. They began browsing the store in earnest, stopping every few paces to pull a book off the shelf and look it over together. Yaoyorozu was not surprised when Tokoyami somewhat unsubtle led them in the direction of the horror section. Would he be Fumikichi if he didn't? What makes you so interested in horror, Fumikichi? Yaoyorozu asked curiously. She selected a book and looked it over, only to frown at the rather gory cover art. That might not be my cup of tea. Well, Tokoyami looked thoughtful. I've always been drawn to the darkness, and horror novels or movies are a good way to experience the darker aspects of life without truly being in danger of being harmed by it. I suppose that indulging in a taste of the macabre allows me to understand my own demons and learn how to control them better. I think I'm doing just fine. Thank you very much. Not what I meant, Dark Shadow. Oh, that's an interesting explanation, Yaoyorozu said, smiling. Maybe we could watch a horror movie together sometime then, and you could show me these darker aspects of life. Tokoyami looked surprised, but he cleared his throat and smiled back at her. That would be a lot of fun, Momo. Yaoyorozu picked out another book and looked at the title. Shadows of Yesterday? She held the book out to Tokoyami. Hey, guess what this book is about? Tokoyami reached for it, but Yaoyorozu stopped him with a headshake. No, I mean try to guess what it's about. Just look at the cover and the title and make your best guess. Tokoyami nodded in understanding and studied the front of the book. Based on the gravestone and the shadow looming over it, I would guess the story involves a ghost coming back to life? Possibly for vengeance. Yaoyorozu quickly read the back of the book and grinned. Wow, that was a good guess. That's pretty much exactly what it's about. Tokoyami smiled, then chose his own book and held it out in front of her. Okay, your turn. Oh, fun. Let's see. Yaoyorozu looked the cover over. Acmophobia? I think that is the fear of sharp objects, and there's a hand lying on a bed with a knife in it. I'm going to guess that it is about a woman killing someone and then being haunted by her actions. I'm afraid not, Tokoyami said after reading the back. It actually appears to be about a cursed knife that forces people who pick it up to commit murder. My turn. My turn. Dark Shadow cried, grabbing his own book off the shelf and showing it to both of them. Go on, guess. Guess. The three ended up playing this game for quite a while, walking to other sections of the store, like the young adult novel section, and trying to accurately guess the plots based on the cover alone. It defeated the whole purpose of don't just a book by its cover, but it ended up being quite enjoyable for them. Well, for Yaoyorozu and Dark Shadow. I'm very bad at this game, Tokoyami sighed. You got the first one right? Yaoyorozu tried to comfort him. Loser. Dark Shadow, don't be rude. I'm sorry, Momo, please forgive me. Why don't you ever apologize to me that quickly? Tokoyami asked, flabbergasted. Because you're not a literal walking queen, Fumi, his shadow replied, snaking around Yaoyorozu's body to give her a peck on the cheek. Yaoyorozu blushed and giggled, petting the delighted dark shadow. Tokoyami couldn't help but feel his heart begin to race at the sight. Too pretty, he whispered. What was that? Nothing. After a quick stop at the bookstore's cafe to get some food, they browsed the store for another few hours, until both of them, and Dark Shadow, had decided they had found all the books they might have wanted. They went up to the front counter, and Yaoyorozu pulled out her credit card. Tokoyami stuttered, realizing suddenly that he hadn't even thought to offer to pay. I'm sorry, I can pay for my own Momo. Please, I insist, Yaoyorozu said, smiling comfortingly. It would make me quite happy to buy your books for you, Fumikage. Tokoyami looked away and nodded. All right, thank you, Momo. Once the books were paid for, Yaoyorozu texted Moatari to let him know they were ready to get picked up. Yaoyorozu stepped out onto the sidewalk and took a deep breath of fresh air. Smiling, she turned to Tokoyami, only to see him fidgeting nervously. Is something wrong, Fumikage? Yaoyorozu asked. Fumikage looked embarrassed. I will be one moment, Momo. Have to use the bathroom. Oh, that's fine. Yaoyorozu waved her hand and smiled. I'll wait outside for you. The car should be a few moments anyway. Fumikage nodded to her and turned around to go back into the store. Yaoyorozu sighed and looked up at the sky, watching the clouds go by. This went really well, she thought happily. I'm very glad Fumikage enjoyed himself. After a few minutes, she heard the bookstore's door open and turned around to see Tokoyami coming back outside. Are you she interrupted herself with a gasp of surprise. In Tokoyami's hands was Momo's Adventures. He stopped in front of Yaoyorozu and held it out to her. I know you didn't want me to spend any money today, he started. But I would be remiss if I let you leave without this. It was my idea. Dark Shadow insisted, popping out of Tokoyami's hood. Tokoyami shot his shadow a glare, and they shrugged before vanishing back into his body. Oh! Yaoyorozu took it from his hands and looked at it in awe. She looked back up at Tokoyami with happy tears forming in her eyes. Fumikage, thank you. But, you really didn't have to. I told you, it wasn't important after all. It made you happy, Tokoyami answered. He looked away, and Yaoyorozu could see a bit of a red flush on his neck beneath his choker. That was important enough for me. Yaoyorozu felt her heart flutter. Fumi. Leaning down was a little awkward due to their difference in height, but it was worth it to kiss Tokoyami. Tokoyami didn't hesitate to return the kiss, dropping his own bag of books to the ground so he could reach his arms up around her. The kiss might have gone on forever, and neither of them would have minded, until Dark Shadow suddenly pushed them apart. No fair, don't hog her to yourself, Fumi, the shadow cried. I want to kiss too, Momo. Oh, of course, Dark Shadow. Yaoyorozu put her hand on the sentient quirk's cheek and kissed them as well. Thank you very much. Aoiwa. Too pretty. Dark Shadow disappeared once more, and Tokoyami shook his head in exasperation. So, a voice called, and Yaoyorozu and Tokoyami jumped, and turned to see that the car had arrived. Moatari was standing at the driver's door, grinning at them. Did you two enjoy yourselves? Both of them blushed. Moatari laughed and went around to open the door, and they climbed into the car. As the car began its drive home, Yaoyorozu had a sudden realization. I guess I can kiss Tokoyami even with a beak. Yaoyorozu could not help but giggle. Tokoyami looked at her in confusion. What? Oh, nothing, Yaoyorozu smiled at him. Just, realizing I answered one of my own questions. She leaned against him, resting her head on his shoulder. Could you read to me, Fumi? Tokoyami smiled. Of course, Momo, he said, kissing her on the head. Choosing one of his books, he opened it to the first page and cleared his throat. Chapter 1. No matter how many times I had seen it, the sight of the sun rising above the coast never ceased to bring a tear to my eye. For it always reminded me of the things I had lost long ago. It all began when I was but a small child, barely able to reach my mother's knee. Dark shadow popped out of him, leaning on his other shoulder to read along. With Tokoyami's soothing narration filling the quiet back seat, Yaoyorozu shut her eyes and contently allowed herself to get lost in the story. Nothing was quite as lovely as the comfort of a good book, after all. "What on earth are you two wearing?" Aoyama screeched. Ojiro and Hagakure posed, both still dressed in their hideous thrift outfits. "What? Aren't we beautiful, Yuga?" Hagakure asked with a giggle. "Some people just don't understand fashion, Toru," Ojiro said, smiling impishly at Aoyama. Aoyama looked ready to strangle both of them, but Kuda put his hand on his shoulder to stop him. "It's not worth it, Yuga," Kuda said. "Come on and sit down, your stomach hasn't fully recovered yet." "Oh, I assure you, Kuji dear, I'm feeling much better now. A queasy rumbling sound interrupted him. You may have a point." Kuda gently led Aoyama to the couch, where they sat down next to Uraraka, Ju, Ishido, and Azui. Uraraka was excitedly telling the other girls all about the concert she and Jairu had gone to. And the lead singer, Shimizu, was a really good singer. Uraraka said. She held up the CD she had bought. "You guys should come to my room and listen to it with me sometime." "That sounds awesome, Ochako. I'm glad you guys had a good time," Ishido said. She and Azui were cuddling together, and the pink girl smiled at the frog girl. "Sue and I cooked dinner together, and it was amazing." "Well, except for the cheesecake." "What cheesecake?" Azui said with a sly smile. "Don't try to deny it, Sue, the world shall know of your crimes against cheesecake." What crimes against cheesecake?" Sato asked, walking up with Shinso holding onto his arm. Behind them, Midoriya and Kirishima approached and smiled at everyone. "Hey Rikido." "Hey Hitoshi." Midoriya greeted them. "How was your date?" "We made out a lot, so I had a great time," Shinso replied. Sato blushed. "Hitoshi," he hissed in embarrassment. Kirishima chuckled and rubbed his head. We made out a lot too. We actually got kicked out of the arcade for it," he admitted. Everyone looked at them in surprise. "You got kicked out of an arcade for making out?" Ishido asked. When both boys nodded, she surprised them by jumping up and hugging them. "I'm so proud of you too." "Hell yeah, Eiji, get some." "Mina." Midoriya cried, hiding his face in his collar. "While I normally would scold you both for doing something inappropriate enough in public to be removed from an establishment," Ida said, walking up behind the couch with Shuji. "I'm very happy you both had a satisfactory date." "How was your date, Mezu?" "Tenya?" Ojiro asked as he and Hagakure joined everyone else. "It was a lot of fun," Shuji replied. "Me and Tenya have a spider daughter now." A stunned silence filled the room. "Okay, I'm going to need a lot of context for that statement, please," Jairu said. As everyone crowded around Shuji and Ida to listen to them talk about their time at the orphanage, Yaoyorozu entered the common room with her laptop in one hand, the other clasped in Tokoyami's. They stopped at the second couch and sat down together, joining Siro and Todoroki who were whispering to each other. "Welcome back, boys." Yaoyorozu greeted them. "Did you have a good time at the movies?" "Actually, not at first," Todoroki admitted. When Yaoyorozu and Tokoyami gave him worried looks, he smiled reassuringly at them. "But Hanta made it better, so, yes, I would say I had a good time." Siro smiled happily. "So did I. Wasn't the Shameless Phantom movie great?" "It was," Todoroki nodded. "Although I still don't quite understand why they changed Shinya from an office clerk to a police officer." Yeah, the dates were fun as fuck," Bakugu's loud voice said suddenly. He and Kaminari were sitting at a table together, and the spiky-haired blonde already looked done with everything. "Can we choose who we're going on dates with tomorrow so I can go to fucking bed?" "Don't mind him," Kaminari jumped into the conversation with a grin. "He's just moody because he didn't want to stop cuddling up on the roof." "Shut up, dunce face, that's not true at all," Bakugu yelled. His blush made everyone else aware of how much he was lying. Yaoyorozu giggled and opened up her laptop. "Okay, are we all ready to decide on the next round of dates?" she asked the room. When everyone nodded, she smiled and pulled up the randomizer she had inputted everyone's names into. "All right, let's do this." "Ooh, wait." Uraraka jumped out of her seat and ran up to her. "Momo, can I push it?" "Can I?" Can I? Can I? Of course. Go right ahead, Ochako. Yaoyorozu handed her the laptop. Uraraka smiled in glee and dramatically raised her finger before pressing the button. Randomize. Looking at the list that appeared on the screen, Uraraka smiled out at her classmates. Okay, so it looks like the second round of first dates is going to be between Tsu and Toru, Fumikage and Mashireo, Katsuki and Kuji, Denki and Aijuru, Rikidu and Kyuka, Mezu and Momo, Hitoshi and Deku, Mina and Shuto, Yuga and me. And last but not least Tenya and Hanta. By the time Aizawa was sluggishly pushing open the door to the UA Teacher's Lounge, he had finally accepted that, no, all 20 of his students declaring their romantic feelings for the entire class had, unfortunately, not been a dream. And neither had his insane promise to try and convince the other teachers to let them take 2 entire weeks off from classes just so they can all go on dates with each other. Seriously, what the actual fuck had he been thinking? Aizawa sighed. He had been thinking that his kids had really needed to figure this out for their own emotional well-being. Damn it, it's getting harder and harder every day to deny that I love these kids. Looking up, he was displeased to see that most of the other teachers were also enjoying their lunches in the teacher's lounge. Yamada and Kayama had dragged a confused-looking Yagi into an animated conversation about whatever TV drama they were obsessed with, while Ken, Anakuro, Ogasawara, and Inui seemed to be having a more pleasant conversation. Maijima was showing Kennedy a new gun design, while Shizenji was calmly listening to an argument between Demoto and Tsuji. Ishiyama was the only one on his own, reading a book. Aizawa would have liked to sit next to him for that reason alone. To his horror, however, the only open seat was next to their newest staff member, Takami Kigo, the former pro hero known as Hawks. Deciding that if he was going to suffer, he might as well really suffer, Aizawa reluctantly sat down next to Takami. The blonde looked at him and grimaced. "Damn, you look even more dead inside than usual," he said, drawing some of the other teachers' attention to them. "Your class up to their normal bullshit?" "You could say that," Aizawa answered carefully. Ken groaned sympathetically. "I know how you feel. Class B was so troublesome today, I feel like I'm going to lose it." "Oh?" Aizawa raised an eyebrow. "Did your entire class confess their feelings to each other and form a 20-person polyamorous relationship?" Takami, who had just taken a bite of chicken, choked. As he struggled not to die, Ken and the rest of the teachers were now staring at Aizawa in dumbfoundment. "No," Ken replied, sounding very confused. "They didn't do that." Aizawa took a sip of his coffee. "Wait, did Class A do that?" Yamada cried, standing up and slamming his hands on the table. "Are you serious?" "He must be joking," Demoto said. "That would be ridiculous." "Oh no, it happened," Aizawa replied, taking another sip of coffee. Ashido freaked out in the middle of class about how she was in love with all 19 of her classmates. All 19 of the others proceeded to admit they were also in love with all 19 other members of the class, and now my entire class is dating. A stunned silence filled the room. "That's," Kennedy began, but appeared to be unable to think of what to say next. "Certainly something. Kayama and Yamada had leapt out of their seats and were running around the room in excitement. "Oh my God, this is the greatest day of my life. My little listeners are all in love. I'm so happy for them." Aizawa jumped when Kayama was suddenly in his face, grabbing onto his shirt with a manic smile. "Shoyuta, tell me everything. Who confessed first after Ashido? Did any of them kiss Shuda? Your investment in my students' love lives continues to be creepy, Nemuri," was his reply. "Come on, Shoyuta." Yamada hugged him from behind. "You can't deny how awesome this is. Oh, I'm so proud of them. I was getting worried none of them would ever date anyone with how completely riddled with trauma they are. This is the best." Beside him, Takami had managed to stop choking and looked betrayed. "How could Fumikage not tell me?" he cried. "I was just texting him and he didn't say anything about any of this." Across the table, Yagi looked similarly stunned. "Young Midoriya never told me he had feelings for his entire class," he said quietly. "Is that normal?" "No," Ken yelled. It most certainly is not. Ken wilted when Yamada and Kayama both spun around to face him, their faces murderous. Sekijiro, if you're even thinking for a moment to shame my little listeners for following their hearts, I will scream directly into your ears until your head explodes. And I'll beat whatever's left into a puddle, Kayama added, holding up her whip threateningly. That's not what I meant. Ken insisted, backing his chair up to get away from them. There's nothing wrong with being polyamorous. You have to admit that 20 kids in the same class getting together is a little odd, right? Well, actually, Shizenji spoke up. I'm not surprised in the slightest. I've seen each of those kids in my clinic enough to see the sexual tension between them all. I was worried I would have to have condoms delivered to the dorms by the truckload if it got any worse. Oh God, please don't talk about sexual tension between kids. Majima was hiding his face in his hands, completely red. He looked particularly overwhelmed by the information for some reason. You're all taking this better than I expected, Aizawa admitted. Oh, I'm just in shock, Ogasawara told him. I'll freak out in private later. I think I'll do the same, Yagi said, looking off into the distance, lost in thought. Well, if they're really going to do something like this, Inui said, tapping his chin, then I think it would be wise to speak to them. Being in a relationship of this kind is bound to put a lot of stress onto the kids. Aizawa sighed. That actually has a lot to do with what I'm about to say next, he said. Please, as if anything could surprise us after that announcement, Ishiyama scoffed. I told my class I would ask Nedzu to give them 2 weeks off of class so they can go on first dates with each other to make sure that they all have proper romantic chemistry with everyone else, so that they don't cause problems for the entire class later down the line. Another stunned silence followed. And I am now surprised. Ishiyama appeared ready to have his soul leave his body. How did you do that? Absolutely not. Ken roared. I don't care if they're now a weird love club or whatever. It would not be fair to Class B if your little show-offs got to waste 2 entire weeks for something as silly as going on dates. Vlad, shut the fuck up. Everyone looked at Yamada and Kayama in shock. The two marched to Aizawa, and he yelped in surprise when they both grabbed him by the arms and started to drag him out of the lounge. We are going to Principal Nedzu now and having him approve it, Kayama said, sounding more determined than Aizawa had ever heard her. Those kids are gonna get their first dates even if I have to kill someone for it. You two seem invested in this, Aizawa said dryly. Yamada snorted. Come on, Shoyuta, it's been 2 years. Don't act like you wouldn't give up your other leg just to see those kids happy. Still, Aizawa refused to verbally concede the point. I seriously doubt Nedzu will even approve something like this. Of course I'll approve the students' time off to go on their dates, Nedzu said cheerfully the second the question had left the other teacher's mouth. I've already gotten the paperwork started. Of fucking course you have, Aizawa muttered while Yamada and Kayama cheered behind him. Welp, look like this is gonna happen. Hope you kids know what you're doing.